Peter.
Good evening, and I want to call the Tuesday, May 16th, 2017 meeting of the Brattleboro Selectboard to order. We have to approve the minutes of the May 2nd meeting. I forgot to ask Jan, is the meeting been officially warned?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. I forgot we didn't do executive session prior to the meeting.
She's new at this.
Yeah, I know it is. We need a motion to approve the minutes of the May 2nd meeting. Would anyone like to make that motion?
So moved.
All in favor of approving the minutes of the May 2nd meeting, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries 5-0. The only remarks I have are, and maybe David will talk more about this, is the All-State Music Festival was here in town. And man, you look tired from it.
Oh, no, it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous.
Yeah. So I think we were lucky to have it. I think the parade was great and all the other activities around it. So it was an honor for us to host that. And I don't know how many people got to go, but it was wonderful. And the town manager says he doesn't have any
I
remarks.
don't, other than to echo that
Yeah.
sentiment. Yeah, thank you.
Skip over that. Do anybody else from the select board have any comments or committee reports?
Add one thing to that same topic. It's a homestay event, and so the community opens their homes to the kids, and it's couple hundred kids. And a lot of states have given that up because of liability issues and because it's just really hard to do. But apparently this year, Brattleboro had more people volunteer and work, instead of having like 6 kids on somebody's carpet, pretty much everybody had a bed. It was the most families that ever volunteered to have kids stay at their homes. And they did one piece, something, it's, you won't get to hear it. There's a CD, but most people won't get to hear it. There's one piece called Guernica, American Guernica, and it's based on the painting from the First World War, the Casals painting from the First World War, of the incredible destruction that happened in that war in that town, the town of Guernica. And this was a musical piece commemorating what the composer was describing with it was the bombing of the church where the 41 girls were killed in the year. But that was what it was commemorative of, and it was just unbelievable. I mean, people were standing up and applauding and then hugging each other and crying. It was really an astonishing experience. The way that those kids performed and the way the conductors that came and worked with them brought out their skills. The best, these are the best musicians in the state. It was just astonishing. It wasn't, they weren't playing the notes, they were playing music. It was gorgeous. It was really something.
Thank you. Does anyone else on the board have any
How am I
comments?
supposed to follow that with solid waste?
I think it's
Thanks.
perfectly
You're
appropriate.
going to let me go first? No, there was we had our meeting and they're still debating flow control on the composting, which is always contentious. So they're split every time we have this. And then there was that revision. And I don't think it affects us, but it's going to affect a lot of the haulers outside of here because it was supposed to go into effect July 1st, but now it's going into effect July 1st, 2018 about the private haulers picking up the food scraps. They don't have to pick it, so it's really confusing everybody. And I wish the state would get together and figure out which way they're going to go with this stuff because they seem to be more confused than anybody. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks they'll figure it out. I don't know if you've heard anything about new changes or
The latest breaking news on that was the 1-year delay implementing.
yeah.
Any news from the Public Service Board about the certificate of public good for the solar project?
Not yet. Not yet, but they're still.
They expected it in May.
Oh yeah, they're still working on that. It's a good project. So.
Anyone else? Comments? All right, now we're public participation. And anyone from the public who wants to speak about something not on the agenda are welcome to do so now. The one thing I would ask is that if you could keep your remarks to about 2 or 3 minutes, it would be really much appreciated. And what I ask is you come up to the microphone and state your name and where you're from. And the microphone is for the television audience, so you will not hear yourself amplified.
Okay, that's fine. Hi, my name is Kit Whalen. I live on Bonnievale Road in West Brattleboro. And I am very interested in the vote that was taken in March, where the Brattleboro voters voted to reduce or eliminate the use of the one-use plastic bags. And I was just wondering, I haven't heard anything about that, and I was wondering where the discussion is regarding the plastic bags, if there is any happening right now.
Yep.
Okay, that's
And
it.
Peter can fill in if I don't tell you correctly. We discussed it about 2 or 3 meetings, select board meetings ago, maybe it was 3 select board meetings ago. And what we've asked town staff to do is collect the information on how other towns do it, how it works, how it doesn't work. And it's going to be like a couple months process. Was it June or something? You may come back to us.
We're hoping to be back to the select board at one of the 2 June meetings, so June 6th or June 20th. We're still working on it. There's a lot to it because there's ranges on a spectrum from, just having a provision that encourages people to not use the bags to absolutely prohibiting them. Likely we'll be coming back with something that recommends an action someplace in between. And we need to explain why and what we learned about different communities' experiences on that spectrum. And the town attorney is making sure that the ordinance that will ultimately get drafted is going to be defensible under Vermont law, which means being a little different than some of the other communities we've seen around us that otherwise have, good examples to learn from. So we're in that process, and we'll be bringing all of that back as soon as we can. We hope it'll be at one of the next 2 meetings.
And one of the important things to know is this would be a town ordinance, which means it has to go through a certain public process. So it's not going to be decided upon at one meeting. So there'll be input, plenty of it.
Great.
And I can tell you that I don't think there's anybody on this board that doesn't want to see them go away, but there's a process.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Everything is a process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is actually a little more complex than most processes.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to talk about something that's not on the agenda?
We're missing somebody tonight.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes, please come forward.
I'm Abby Manukin. I live here in Brattleboro. I just wanted to say how excited I am that you moved so quickly on hiring an energy coordinator, and that just reassures us that you are as committed to moving forward with energy efficiencies and commitment to addressing the impacts of climate change in our community. So I'm really grateful for that, and I'm excited to see what Phoebe does.
Great, thank you.
So Abby, we can put that down as a positive, right? Okay, good.
All right, does anyone else want to talk about something not on the agenda? All right, thank you. We're going to move on to liquor commissioners. So I need a motion to convene as liquor commissioners. David has a motion to convene as liquor commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? The motion carries 5-0. We are talking about a special event permit for strolling of the Heifers. If everyone can remember, at the last meeting, we approved, I believe, 7 vendors to appear at their Friday night street festival. And we were told at that time they were coming back with 1 more. So that's what we're doing this evening. And the permit would be, the vendor is Spirits of Old Bennington. And I'm assuming, Peter, that everything we talked about last week,
Yes.
or last meeting, is the same. That it's the same event, it's the same time.
It is. It'll be the Friday evening event. It's from 5 to 8:30 in the evening, and all the paperwork from the Spirits of Old Bennington is in order, so we recommend your approval.
Okay, and police and fire, and everybody's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments?
Just that the motion says 5 to 9, and the
Oh, yeah,
says 5 to
8:30.
So change the motion. The permit says.
Actually, I apologize. Yeah, the memorandum said 5 to 8:30, but the application says 5 to 9 and the motion says 5 to 9, so please approve it that way.
Great.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Great. Good catch.
Good catch.
Does anyone in the public have any comments about the permit for the Strolling of the Heifers? All right, would anyone like to make a motion?
To approve the special event permit for Spirits of Old Bennington to participate in the Strolling of the Heifers Friday Night Street Festival inside of the River Garden located at 157 Main Street on June 2nd, 2017, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Okay, we have a motion to approve a special event permit for Old Bennington to participate in the Strolling of the Heifers. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries 5-0. Would anyone like to make a motion to
So
adjourn
moved.
as liquor commissioners? We have a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carries 5-0. Now, I would entertain a motion to adjourn as water and sewer commissioners, not adjourn, convene as water and sewer commissioners.
So moved.
All those in favor of convening as water and sewer commissioners, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carries 5-0. And first up is the wastewater treatment plant energy efficiency analysis. And I'll turn that over, I'm assuming, to the town manager.
Sure. I'll give you a quick summary of what's before you this evening, and then if you'd like more information, Patrick Moreland actually prepared this and has been very involved in the variety of different ways in which we've pursued energy audits and energy efficiencies, and of course related to anything in the operation at the wastewater treatment plant, any aspect of that facility and what we're going to be looking at through this. Steve Barrett's also here and can address that. But in summary, you'll recall that in a prior discussion, the members of the Energy Committee recommended that we take a look at the wastewater treatment plant because it is the largest single consumer of energy of any town facility. And so unlike the energy audits that we did a couple of years ago for the other town buildings, where that was about the building envelope and making sure that we actually retained the heating and cooling inside the building for the most part, and more efficient ways to do that. This one's actually a process audit, so it's about the way in which sewage gets treated and processed at the plant, and seeing if there's improvements that can be made to that process in order to save energy. So it's a very particular field within energy efficiency, and there's an expert firm and an individual that does this sort of work that Efficiency Vermont likes to work with. So they recommended this person. He's given us a proposal. It's a very reasonable rate of $12,900, of which Efficiency Vermont will pay half right up front, and then the town also is eligible if we go ahead and implement the quick payback items after we get the report. We're eligible to receive reimbursement of the other $6,400, $6,450. So we're happy to recommend your approval.
And this is money that would be spent from the utility fund.
That's correct.
This is all utility
The
fund.
expenditure would be from the utility fund, and the savings to be realized would also be in the utility fund. Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions or comments
We
about
have
this?
negotiated a deal where if you make quick improvements to save more money, they'll give you your money
One
back.
back, yeah.
Good work. You seem to get a few more like that.
I have a question if no one else does. What's the time frame of getting this done? I didn't see it in here unless I missed it.
I don't recall the exact duration, but it's a pretty quick turnaround. It's not something that's going to take most of the next year for them to do. It's actually a matter of weeks or a few months. Do you recall, either Patrick or Steve, more precisely than that?
My recollection is very much like yours. I think this was a couple of months and they'd be done. But I don't have the exact duration.
We'll get that answer and send you an email.
10 weeks?
10 weeks? Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, good.
That's quick.
10 weeks. There you go.
Does anyone on the board have any comments and questions? Does anyone in the public have any comments or questions about the energy audit? No? Would any-
Couple of thumbs up.
Yeah. Would anyone on the board like to make a motion
I will move to authorize the town manager to accept the proposed scope of work submitted by Process Energy Services LLC, and to authorize the town manager to execute the cost-sharing agreement with Efficiency Vermont for the energy process audit at the town's wastewater treatment plant.
All right, we have a motion to authorize the town manager to accept the proposed work by Process Energy Services and to authorize the town manager to execute the cost savings agreement with Efficiency Vermont. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carries 5-0. Next up is the Drinking Water Assessment Management Grant. And this is a grant that the town manager has already applied for, and we are just saying it's okay that you did that.
You're ratifying the application. The deadline was actually last week, and so we have one other that's like that this evening, where in order to meet the deadline for the grant applications, we went ahead and filed it on my authority and are just asking for you to ratify that that was the right thing to do. In this case, it is $20,000 of essentially free money. There is a $5,000 match to it, but it's a in-kind match, so our staff time will exceed the town's obligation in this regard. And what the $20,000 will do is help us complete what you've seen elsewhere in the documentation related to the plans for the upcoming year and the utility fund budget, related to getting a good, thorough analysis of what's needed in our water treatment plant. It's been 1989 facility that's going to need very major updating, and so this will help get that scope in good shape. This is a particular component piece of that that looks at the assets of the drinking water system in the town.
And so it's not, they're not analyzing our drinking water, it's the
That's
system.
correct. The drinking water, we're happy to report, is, always
okay.
exceeds the minimum standards for good quality water. This is not about that. This is about keeping the infrastructure in good shape, and this particular piece of it is the asset, what they call an asset management component. The broader piece that we spoke to in the proposed budget is the engineering analysis and actually scoping of the capital improvement that we'll be proposing next year.
So is this, Steve, is this in conjunction with Dufresne, or is it completely a different group?
It's completely separate.
Okay. But they're working with them, or?
Yes, they will work with our engineer, but it's primarily being done, this is through the state.
Right.
Dufresne and Associates will be the engineer that will do the work, and then we'll get benefit for our salary and our input also. That's the kind that Peter talked about. So the state actually approached us, encouraged us to go for this grant. That's why it came a little late. They came to us, and so I went to Peter, and that's why we're coming to you tonight. I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
And it's going to the consulting fee, so it's not going to any fixes.
That's
It's going
correct.
to the
Right.
consultant.
This year is about planning for this major upgrade that's required, and then hopefully we'll be able to next year or very soon after actually make the improvements.
Does anyone else on the board have any comments or questions?
Sounds good.
Does anyone in the public have any comments and questions about the Drinking Water Assessment Management Grant? All right, would somebody like to make a motion?
I would make a motion to ratify the town manager's decision to apply for a drinking water asset management grant in the amount of $20,000.
All right, we have a motion to ratify the town manager's decision to apply for a drinking water management grant in the amount of $20,000. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carries 5-0. The last issue under Water and Sewer Commissioners is the FY18 Utility Fund Budget. Tonight, we're going to look at approving the utility fund budget. Plus, there was a discussion during the previous select board, the last meeting or two, where there was a conversation about whether or not we should lower the rates or freeze them. So we're going to have both that discussion. We're going to explain what the utility fund is, talk about the budget, and talk about changing the rate or keeping it the same, or
Sure. Okay, I'm Steve Barrett, the Director of Public Works, and Utilities is part of our function along with the Highway Division. So what I'd like to do is go over the operation budget, and then Peter and John are also here if you got any questions about the revenue or the rate study. So I've just done a summary to kind of briefly walk you through the budget itself. And I did start with the revenue portion of the budget, and the water and sewer rate analysis model was accepted by the board. This is the fourth year, or will be the fourth year of accepted rate increase. And basically that the rates that we set have worked out quite well with the utility and kept it has kept a good has actually performed as expected, which is good. And then we can talk about as we get into the budget, some of the some big surprises that we get and the cost and utilities. It's a little bit different from the highway. When we have problems, we have large problems with large expenditures.
can I just stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
We're talking about the tax rate of water and sewer that people pay.
The water and sewer rates
That's what I
that
mean,
are
yes.
charged to the customers.
Charge to the customers.
So there's fees that are charged for the wastewater portion and also for the water portion.
Yeah, and that's where the revenue comes.
And that's where the revenue comes from utilities.
Right, just quickly to just a clarification, you said that it's performed as expected in the last 2 years?
Yeah, there was times when the board voted for the 5-year increase, they wanted to go the long haul on this because each year you look at it anyways. This board, as water and sewer commissioners, looks at the budget every single year. But the board as a whole, when they passed an ordinance, wanted to look at the big picture. They looked at the rate schedule and they voted for a 5-year, rate that was set. So each year you revisit it, the board always does revisit it, but there's some years where there wasn't as much money, and there's other years where there's a carryover, where there's extra money. And the intent of that was so that you could pretty much flatline the rates. So the rates didn't have to all of a sudden go to 9 or 10%, and then the next year, geez, it's a good year, so we went down to 3%. It allowed it to be fairly flat, although the increases have been there all along. Some years, there's been several $100,000 of money that's available to cover the next year that may be under. So overall, it has performed the way it should. And we could see that when we first looked at the rates, when we first had to increase them. And that's why the board made the decision to go with 5 years.
I thought that one of our previous, I don't know if it was in March or even last year, I thought one of the reasons we were thinking about not continuing with the 2 and the 6% increases is because it actually generated more money than had been anticipated.
Yes, and that's part, when we get done with my presentation, and Peter and John, we'll show you exactly where we're at.
Great.
So just giving you that.
Don't do that. But
I was going to say that.
one quick observation directly on that point, and then we'll talk more broadly about the rates and the rate model and the question that's before you as to whether to stay the course for the final 2 years of the ordinance. And we'll talk about that after you look at the budget. But specifically on point with the as expected comment, the rates portion has been as expected. So the revenue that's been provided by the rate increases that were approved 3 years ago by the board has been reasonably within a tolerance of what was planned at that time. But the overall impact has been more positive than what was the model showed at that time. And that's what we had some discussion about. Primarily, the reason behind that is that there's substantially more revenue being raised in the septic receiving operation, where people actually truck in septic to the plant, than what had been predicted. And so there's a significant benefit to the overall model performance as a result of that. But we'll talk about the bigger picture on that at the end.
And that's a little follow-up I had on the revenue portion. The sewage disposal revenue from septic tank disposals account for an increase that reflect additional revenue in this line item. We expect to generate over $250,000 a year. And that's if you lived outside the community or you lived in Brattleboro and you had your septic tank pump. that would go to the wastewater treatment plant. So we're really a regional facility too, to accommodate septic receiving. And there's separate fees if you have somebody pump your septic tank and bring it to the facility. And also they're higher strength. Another thing we will be looking at is connection fees, possibly from some expansions of larger businesses. In the operation, the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Plant and the wells expenses, that's the first part of the budget after the revenue. And the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment is our primary source of drinking water. The wells, the retreat wells, is a backup supply. That's the facility that you see on Route 30. The expenses have been reduced slightly because of a decrease in chemical costs at the Pleasant Valley and the fuel consumption at the retreat wells. There were some changes done to the heating system with fans, and the boiler itself was gone through, and it resulted in a savings in the fuel consumption. Based on the average, and this is all based on an average treatment of 1.2 million gallons a day. That's what we produce for drinking water, and that's what we treat. Sometimes it can be a little bit more because of infiltration. The retreat wells, again, serve as a backup to the Pleasant Valley water supply and provides about 700,000 gallons a month to the source water. The budget for this, the budget provides for funds for potential increase in water usage throughout drought and fire events. So when you look at the utilities budget, you got to realize that we can't predict the weather and we can't predict water consumption. There's averages that we look at, but if you have a high dry year, a hot dry year, then the consumption of water use goes up. If it's a really wet year, like it has been this year, then your revenues go down. So there's your basic usage, and then there's usage that may increase due to weather or other supplies.
One other quick, and this is almost off topic, but I noticed in your report that Fibermark needed a couple of million gallons of water. Do they pay for that?
They pay for that. What happens with Fibermart is their primary water supply for treatment of their process is from the river.
Yeah.
But when the quality of the river, there's turbidity in the river, such as heavy rainfall or runoff from the spring, then they have to turn on to the water supply. And we're all alerted when that happens because it's extremely high, the amount of water that they use per minute for that process. And it could be in the millions in a week. So that's another thing that contributes also to the revenue when they do turn on. They try at all costs not to turn on.
That's why the river's there.
That's right. Water distribution and storage, that's all the piping in between the water treatment and the wastewater. There's been an increase in there, increase due to workman's comp insurance. And there's also some expected retirement, so that's going to have an effect on the budget also. The health insurance line item has actually gone down. The administration had been working on these changes with the healthcare costs, and that's reflected in this particular budget. Water treatment, the health insurance has increased a little bit. That's the wastewater treatment because of change in usage for the different employees, marital status, family. So that did go up some. We've also adjusted the fuel oil count to better reflect the actual usage. Staff has been working with the Energy Committee. That's the report that you just heard to see what we can do to bring some of the costs down at the water treatment. And as you just passed, that audit is funded through a grant through Efficiency Vermont. The sewer mains, there's a slight increase. That's the maintenance of the collection system itself. To just actually reflect the actual expenses. We've also increased the contract maintenance and equipment accounts that's necessary to, we're doing more camera work when we find out the technology allows us to check these with cameras, sewer problems with cameras. So we're doing more contract work for that, but it actually saves you money because you can identify the problems. Administration liability insurance increase, and also we also increased our funding for training and professional services. In the next few years, the utilities division, there will be a lot of long-term employees that will be retiring, so we're trying to get the people trained to take on these different positions.
Looking at the health insurance line, you're projecting quite a different number for fiscal year 2018.
That's the result of a change that we made in the health insurance program over the last couple of years. So we created a health reimbursement account program where the deductible with Blue Cross went all the way up to $6,000 a year. But for family coverage, but the second $3,000 of that is covered by an HRA layer. So the town is actually paying those expenses directly instead of buying insurance for them. And that's brought our premiums down from Blue Cross substantially more than the cost of us actually paying for the direct claims in that HRA layer. So the program from an employee's point of view stayed the same in terms of the value of the benefit and how much it comes out of a family's pocket versus what is covered by the town. But our overall costs for providing the benefit are down by over $100,000 a year, and you're seeing, a sprinkling of that throughout these different programs for what's actually allocated to those programs.
Thank you.
Now, can I ask you a question about that? If you go on page 4, line 7 down, it says HRA expense. Is that part
Exactly.
of what you're talking about?
Yep, that's exactly right. The
$3,500.
that reflects the additional cost for that piece. But you'll see in almost every case, there are going to be anomalies, particularly in the small programs with only a few employees. Steve pointed out a few minutes ago, one where health insurance is actually going up from 17 to 18 because there's only a few employees in that group, and one of them probably had a baby or maybe got married. And
Happens.
so, right, and so it has changed the coverage for that particular small group. But overall, town-wide, you'll see a much more significant savings in the health insurance line item than you'll see the increase in the HRA. I don't know.
So moving on, that's kind of a summary. The equipment maintenance, we reduced that because of the gas and diesel pricing, which has been pretty stable over the last few years. And then I can just do a quick summary of the capital. Peter, if that works.
Please.
Quick. So the first thing we've done is the capital would be in your long sheet that has, it's like an Excel sheet that will show your different projects and show vehicles. So the first item is the water treatment facility itself. We're seeking funding to conduct a preliminary engineering evaluation of the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Plant. As Peter mentioned earlier, the existing water treatment plant was put into service in 1989 and has performed pretty well. Right now, we're looking at conducting this preliminary engineering evaluation that will provide design and preliminary plans with cost estimates. So that would allow the board next year to get a better handle on what's proposed or what's needed to upgrade the water treatment facility itself at Pleasant Valley. So we have budgeted $175,000 in this year's budget for that. I-91 water main. This is something that has occurred recently. A leak developed on a 12-inch water main at exit 2 under the I-91 bridge on Weston Avenue. The 12-inch water line is one of 2 mains under the bridge that are main feeds to the distribution system within the town itself. Both water lines were installed around 1958. One of the mains did fail back in 2005. It was a 16-inch main. At the time, we replaced the 16-inch main, and we did not replace the 12-inch main. There was an option at the time, but the decision was made not to replace it. That water main has actually sprung a leak. You can see visible water on the easterly abutment if you're in the northbound lane of I-91. Of course, our concern with this is the volume of water that's needed for fire protection for the town overall and the demands of the water system. We feel it's necessary to have both these mains in place. Temporarily, we have installed a wraparound coupling and made the water main secure for now. But it's steel pipe, welded steel pipe, and it's pitted, and it's actually leaking some water. So we have obtained this, again, from Dufresne and Associates, which is pretty much our primary drinking water supply engineering firm. They have prepared a detailed estimate of $460,000 to make this repair. This kind of gets back to what we talked about earlier. When we do have issues or problems within the water system, sometimes they can be quite costly. So that's another thing that you'll see that we are able to I guess, to hold on and to put this in the budget. So it's kind of an unexpected, expected expense. So I just want to bring that to your attention.
I'd like to add quickly on that one, Steve, before you go on to the rest of the capital plan, that that is the kind of expense that had it occurred, say, in October or November instead of in April, we would have needed to address with you as an emergency in mid-year, even though it wasn't a budgeted item, because of the importance of the line and because of the potential for it to just fail suddenly, completely. It could cause shutting down the highway as well as the major disruption to the water system. So that particular one gives us really a great deal of concern. The reason it's coming to you as a budgeted item, and even then it's a substantial increase over what we would have been asking for capital for this coming year, where we would have been at about $500,000. Instead, we're closer to $1 million for FY18 capital. But the reason we're able to at least be a little bit more orderly about this and put it in as a budgeted item was just a fluke of the calendar. We couldn't have actually put the plans out and gotten bids and gotten the work done before we were into the new fiscal year anyway. So we intend, if you agree that we proceed on this course, we intend to continue on with the preparations for the project, and we'll do the bidding of the project so that as soon as possible in the midsummer, we can actually get the work done. But by then it will be the new fiscal year, and that's why you see it as a budgeted item.
So
Just curious how that works. Previously, the water projects would have been 325, and then with this additional 460, that makes it 785.
That's correct.
So where does the 460 come from?
It is from the
Comes out of the balance.
The balance of the utility fund, that
Gotcha.
$5 million-ish that we're going to be talking about here shortly.
Right,
Yep.
which just got $500,000 smaller.
That's correct. Exactly right.
Can I follow up on that one? Was this pipe anticipated anywhere in the future to be replaced, or is this just a total?
There's a list of pipes that we do have.
Yeah.
That'll be the next item that we talk about, actually, under water mains. And we compile a list of water mains that need to be replaced, and
But
they're on a
this one
schedule.
This one wasn't anywhere.
It wasn't on the,
foreseeable future.
it wasn't
was
up
a total
front, no.
float.
That's correct.
Should we have done it at the time that we did the other one?
Yes, absolutely. It was a recommendation, but at the time, the funds were tight. So,
Always done.
yep. The next item is water mains. An example is Frost Place. Last year, we replaced the water main on Frost Place. And what we tried to do is replace a lot of these water mains, anticipating that we may be paving the roadway the next year, so we don't have the smooth road and the water main break after. The other thing that this account is used for is to replace fire hydrants and valves throughout the system. So this is for replacing water mains, valves, and hydrants in the water system itself, and we're asking $100,000 for that. Water meters, $50,000. The water meters are kind of the heartbeat of the system as far as the revenue goes. We continue to upgrade those as we go. We have 3,990 meters in the system. We've replaced over 2,000 of those meters in the system. The older meters are only about 80% accurate. The newer meters don't have mechanical devices. They're run on electronic, and so they're more accurate. So what we do is replace as many as we can per year with the staff that we have. And last but not least, almost last but not least, is the sewer project. The account is used to upgrade the sewer main similar to the water. Most of the sewer mains in town are over 100 years old. This account will restore sewer manholes. This year, we're going to be doing some sewer manholes where they put a slip liner on the inside and seal the manholes, but each manhole costs approximately $7,000, but it prevents infiltration from getting into the sewer system and then having to pay to treat it later on. That's one of the treatments that we do. Also, it raises the sewer manhole covers when we do paving. Those are the access points to the sewer system itself, and also just upgrade small sections of sewer main throughout town. That's $100,000. And the wastewater treatment plant, $50,000 energy improvements. We're hopeful that we get some good advice from our audit, and we're able to actually do some practical applications with some funding. So that's what this money is for, is to actually to apply some of the recommendations that are made from the audit. And the last thing is a DPW site evaluation. As the board remembers, in the highway budget this year, $35,000 was granted to do a site evaluation of the highway division, Public Works on Fairground Road. Also, the water department is hosted there also. They pay rent to the general fund to store their equipment and such there. There's a couple reasons for this. We're pretty tight there. The salt shed is in disrepair. That's from the old fairgrounds itself. And so we're trying to look at this whole look at the facility as a whole, see if we can expand on site and come up with some good ideas to take care of the Public Works Department in the years to come. But the primary focus, this all started really with the salt shed, but if you're going to replace the salt shed, you want to make sure you put it in the right place and look at the other deficiencies at Public Works. So with that, we're looking at the utilities division too, because they have options. Again, they're paying into the general fund to look at alternatives for the water department itself. And that's all I have as far as a review of the budget.
Can I ask you a question about the site evaluation and planning?
Yes,
The 35,000 is just for planning.
that's right.
So, but there's no money in the budget in years to come to do anything.
That's right. Because first of all, we need to determine what we should do, what we can do, and then come back before the board and with some ideas, and that's what that's intended to do.
Okay.
It's been put off long enough.
Yeah. So it's really to come up and maybe to get some cost, of what would it cost to do A, B, or C. So it's a very beginning of a process that's going to take years.
Yeah, it's way in front.
Yeah.
I don't know how many years ago it was that the matrix study was done.
Yeah.
And there was a pretty thorough series of recommendations for doors going in and out, being able to drive through the buildings and stuff like. Is any of that information in that study going to be useful?
We would definitely.
I don't know how much of
yeah.
not necessarily you're going to save any money on the 35,000 because
Right.
it's current engineering and things
Yeah.
change. But there are a lot of conceptual ideas and models in that report.
No, that's a good idea. We'll supply that to the engineers. Because there is a lot of information, like you said, on the facility itself.
Actually, one other question, and this may be coming up at some other point, but in the memo we got today and then from March, we talked about as much as $5 million preliminary cost estimate for water main work, and that's above the 900,000 that's in the capital plan so far for the next 5 years.
That's correct.
Additional stuff we're going to have to get to.
Yes, the longer term upgrade.
That's longer than 5 years.
Right, based on what we can reasonably foresee as a definable scope that extends past the 5-year program.
Wow.
Right. That's actually a good segue, if you don't mind.
At least we don't have to get 5 million
Are you
into the
gonna
next
go
5 years.
Is it all right if I?
Are you going to the rates?
Yes, is
Well,
that
I just want to
okay?
make sure nobody has questioned
Sure.
the budget first.
That's
One
fine.
last question, Steve, about the 460. I mean, what are the main factors of that being so high?
Well, the water main itself is hung on the bridge abutment. So,
That's tricky.
yeah, that's a big factor with it.
Is it the size too, or is that a typical size?
No, it's a pretty large main for a town, like 16 is the largest that we have. So it's a very large main, and then they have to go over the interstate itself. So we're going to be doing a 12, which is smaller than the 16 that we did.
Right.
Okay, but 12 is a very large main also. So you got to go across both lanes, I-91. Logistics are pretty difficult. So that's,
Closures and things like that.
Yeah.
And just as a second part, real quick, I noticed that the FY 2019 is going up to 150 for water mains. Does that general maintenance jump kind of reflect you guys sort of trying to get more on top of the annual?
Yeah, there's some shifts on the capital that happen depending on whether we got to focus on the water or like this year, we know what we have for a project. So we're going to focus on that. And this is subject, we tried to compile a 5-year plan. You'll notice there's no vehicles at all because the fleet, we've caught up with that this year, which is good news. So there's no purchases of those, but when you start moving ahead, you'll start to see, the vehicles come into play too.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good, solid plan, but it's always subject to change depending on what projects come up.
We also have a year where we know we need to do more work in sewer main replacement. So you'll notice that the standard for that one is $50,000 a year, but we're doing $100,000. We're proposing $100,000 for this coming year. So that directly offsets having 100 instead of 150 for the water mains. And meanwhile, the 460 is for one particular water main. So
Right.
that was the balancing act there. Yeah, just for this 1 year.
So on the 460, does it make sense to tap into the reserve fund at all for any of this?
We will. That's it. Remember that in the utility fund, it functions a little differently than the general fund. So it's when we have the conversation about rates and about what the fund balance is right now there, that unlike in the general fund where the fund balance has to be explicitly appropriated over, to be utilized,
Right.
Here it's
Right.
if the budget calls for more money than the amount of revenue coming in, which in many years it does. You heard Steve talking about the fluctuations that occur here. There's much more variation in the utility fund than in the general fund. So our revenues tend to be pretty steady and on an upward trend, but we still have years where we spend more money than we make and we draw down the fund balance some, and then other years where we bring in more money than we spend and we build up the fund balance some. So it doesn't require a special action of you to identify that 460 as being from reserves.
Now we can move on to the next.
Okay. So, back, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We just want to explain a little bit what this is.
I do,
Okay,
yes.
good.
Yeah, thank you. I want to take it back to the memorandum dated May 11th that sits as cover to the proposed budget because we can't have a meaningful rate discussion without looking at the overall cash position of the fund balance in the utility fund, and then relate that to the kinds of things we've just been talking about in terms of the known costs that are current and upcoming for utilities, as well as the surprise at the interstate and what that represents about the potential for large magnitude surprises that can come in this system. It's heavy infrastructure, it's underground infrastructure, and when something fails suddenly, it's always an expensive repair. So currently, the expectation is that we're going to end the fiscal year. Actually, take that back. Not the year-end cash balance, but the absolute current cash balance in the utilities fund is $5,178,250. So we're at about $5.2 million currently in the fund. But based on the budget that's been proposed to you tonight, as well as the things that we can foresee occurring in the next month and a half before the end of this fiscal year, we expect actually to draw down that balance by year end fiscal 28, June 30 of, fiscal 18, June 30, 2018. We expect that balance to be $3,936,724. So down from $5.2 million to $3.9 million. That's in part, but only in part, based on the $460,000 for the I-91 project. We expected this year in the trend that was forecast using the 5 years of rate increases that was in the current ordinance and the capital program and other expenses that are expected for this coming year. This was expected to be a year when we would draw down from fund balance rather than build it up. But we're going to need to draw it down by almost $500,000 more than expected. And so instead of being still in excess of $4 million, we expect to draw it down to about 3.9.
Now, can I stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
Maybe I'm right. If you look at, you're not talking about this total.
I'm talking about the total of the capital plan and the operating
Budget, okay.
budget. Yep.
Okay.
So what this underscores, we recommended, staff did, to the prior select board when they considered the rate matter on March 21st. We recommended at that time that the current rate ordinance be allowed to play out, that the remaining 2 years of increases that have already been approved go into effect. And then when it's time for a new ordinance, it should take a hard look at whether we can have a period of time when we maintain those rates flat. Or whether there's additional adjustments that might be required. And the basis for that recommendation in March was the unknown magnitude. We know it's going to be millions of dollars, but we don't know exactly how much of this water treatment plant upgrade. We know that that's a facility that is now 30 years old. It needs work. It is going to get to, if we don't do that work relatively soon, it's going to get to needing it critically, and in situations where we might have to actually make emergency repairs as opposed to being able to make a good methodical planned repair. So it's in the interest of the safety of the water supply and in the best interest of just good management of the infrastructure that we do the planning work that is proposed in this budget, using in part the $175,000 that's proposed in the capital plan, and in part the $20,000 grant that you've authorized already this evening for the application, so that we come up with a very detailed plan. We know what the scope of the project will be. We'll have an engineer's estimate of the cost. So instead of it being, in excess of $5 million, maybe as much as $7 million on a thumbnail estimate, we'll actually have, a plan and an engineered cost estimate for the project that we can then use for planning purposes going forward. It may be, if we think optimistically, and if we come to a positive and surprising outcome, it's possible that we might end up with a scope that isn't as expensive as what is currently thumbnail estimate, and we might be able to, if we maintain a good healthy balance here in this fund, actually be able to afford much or all of that improvement, particularly if we take it in phases, without actually having to issue additional bonds. We'll be able to manage the fund balance here and the revenues that are going to come in from the additional rate increases, and actually be able to afford that work without additional bonds and the carrying cost of those bonds. But it may not be. It may be that we get the opposite outcome. And so instead of being, $5 million or $7 million, maybe it's going to be a $10 or $11 million project. And we wouldn't have the cash to be able to do that. And we would have to issue bonds and carry that in the next model update and the next rate analysis. So because of that uncertainty, we suggested to you that this isn't a good time to interrupt the increases in the rates that have already been approved, that'll maintaining this healthy balance at approximately $5 million is where it has been hovering. Goes up a little bit and down a little bit. We're going to be down to 3.9 in the forecast for this coming year. So our suggestion already was let's get that planning done. Let's know the magnitude of that work that needs to be done. Because there also can be surprises. So we have that we know is coming, that we should prepare ourselves for. And then there can be times when there's an expensive repair that pops up. I promise we didn't create the urgent need for a repair at I-91. We didn't do that. But it really does serve as Exhibit A tonight. The timing is significant for us in showing why we worry about these things.
But that's the model that we've been trying to get to anyways for the past 3 or 4 years, is to have enough in so that we're not constantly dipping in or having to bond out or having to do all these other things, and having the money in reserve.
So
go ahead.
So just to wrap up, the bottom line is that we felt there was actually good justification 2 months ago for the board to stay the course, and now that's been further reinforced by the situation out at the I-91 water main. And we would just strongly recommend that, while nobody likes a water rate increase or a sewer rate increase, these are ones that have been, long coming. It's part of the fourth year of a 5-year program that's already been adopted by a prior select board. We've got all those reasons we've been talking about that we need to make sure we don't draw this balance down too low and regret that. And so our recommendation, I will say we've got the model set up this evening and we can run you through some different scenarios if you'd like to see some different scenarios, but our staff recommendation remains that we just stay the course and don't change the ordinance at this time.
I think you should run through scenarios because some of us on the board haven't seen
Okay.
scenarios. I mean,
Sure.
Would it be interesting? I think
I
we
think
should
you're right,
look.
yeah. I mean, I think looking at $5 million over 3 years, it looks like, wow, this is doing pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And that means 7.5 after the 5, so maybe we can go back a little bit and keep the rate down. But I think this main and the additional costs we're seeing in the capital plan, I think this stay the course is the way to go. But I also think it's useful to see the projections and the numbers that Steve talked about.
Steve, that main that's under, none of that is underground, right?
No, there's pipe hangers and it
Right.
hangs off
Right.
the girders for the overpass.
So as Tim asked, I'm trying to, where are they coming up with $460,000 in work?
There's almost a 15% contingency because of the unknown. So if that works out to our favor, that's like 69,000
Okay.
less. So that gets you into the 300.
And
the other
we're going
thing,
out to bid on this, so.
right? And so last time when we put the 16-inch main out to bid, there was a local contractor that did some pretty clever things that kept the cost down.
Right.
So, we're hoping to see that again because there has been a contractor that has already replaced this.
Right.
That is local, that could and probably will bid on this project
Right.
also. So that may be in our favor also. But the engineering cost comes from our engineer who looks at these and there's values for estimates
Right.
for this type of work.
And you try to go on the high side on an estimate.
And you want something, you don't want a number that is,
Right.
fictiously low either.
Good.
Do you want us to power up the
Yeah.
model?
Come on,
Please.
Fire it up.
all right.
No, this is quick.
Who brought
I'm
popcorn?
already ready. I'm making it quick.
Who brought popcorn?
Yeah. This isn't going to be long enough for popcorn.
Rod, did you bring anything?
No.
Juju beans, anything?
I was promoting that you leave.
Right.
Raisinets?
That didn't work.
I got a pair. You're funny. I can say it.
It gets darker.
A little brighter. Don't freak out.
Will it work for VCTV if we dim the lights? Yes? Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Thank you.
When did not?
Yeah.
No.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay, so the line that we're going to be looking at primarily, there's a lot of numbers here, but the line that we're going to look at primarily is the purple line at the bottom, or the pink line at the bottom. And that shows you the cash balance in the fund for each of the years we're looking at. The first year is 2016. 2017 is the 4.1. And as we scroll forward, you can see that's the number that Peter was talking about at the end of 18. The cash balance in the fund is down to 3.9 million. Then it starts heading up. 4.3 in 19, 5.1 in 20, 6.1 in 21, 7.3 in 22, and so on. So the cash balance is building up at about $1 million a year once we get past 2018.
I want to make a quick observation there, John, that you see in the green lines above, 6% and 6%. And when we go back, you'll see it's shaded with a different color. I think it's yellow, but I'm not sure. That 6% and 2%. So the 6% and 2% is what's actually the increases in the two components of this. Oh, it's showing 6 and 6.
No, it's up.
Yeah, the 2 is in a different, it's in the water.
Oh,
fund.
I see. Okay. Okay. So this is just showing sewer, which is why it's 6%. But the point is, once it switches over to past 2019, every 2020 and beyond, it's still carrying forward as if there were going to be 6% increases each year. So as you see that balance build up in the way that John was just describing, that would be if there continued to be those increases. But the only two that right now would actually happen as a result of the existing ordinance would be the one for this coming fiscal year and one more beyond that.
And is building at $1 million a year, is that sufficient for the projects we have in our scope?
The straightest answer to that is we don't know. It's prudent. Again, there's going to be years when it goes up and years when it goes down. You see that our forecast after this year's dip is that we're going to move back up a bit. It's prudent for us to be planning for that. The answer to your question of whether that'll be sufficient is going to be determined by the planning for the water plant work. The rest, we can carry forward with the hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work that we do routinely throughout this system each year. We can keep up with that well based on the forecast that you see here. The bigger challenge for us will be affording the upgrade to the water treatment plant.
Because when I was thinking about that and looking at these numbers, they actually seemed less big than I would have liked.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this model also reflects the capital that Steve talked about earlier for each of those years. So it includes nothing for the major water plant upgrade, which, when that happens could be a large number. But that's not included in the model here, and it's not included in our capital forecast that Steve addressed. So that's the wastewater, and that's the bottom line in terms of the cash for the fund looking forward. This is the water fund, and you can see again the green line shows the 2% increase going forward, and you can see again the purple line right here is the cash for just the water fund. So the earlier one we were looking at is the cash for both the water and the wastewater operations combined. This is just the water operation. And you can see here
It drops.
that it's dropping over time until we get out to 2022. And then it starts to build, well, it stays about the same.
Yeah.
High 2s, low 3.
All that pretty steady.
So not a lot of change there with the assumptions we have for capital in the plan. So, do you want to look at?
I think you should show us if the rate isn't at 6, like if the rate isn't at 2 and the rate isn't at 6, what that would mean,
Okay, what would you like the rate to be, Kate?
Let's guess. Let's say 4.
I was going to say, try 0.
Do it in the sewer
Okay.
part, please, because that's where you can see the impact at a glance for the bottom line of the whole fund.
Okay.
So if we were to reduce the rate, this is what will happen.
So this is now at 6%. So we want to change that to 4.
Let's do
Yeah.
4.
4.
But don't forget to change it back.
All right. Let's see what it does here. So at 4%, let's see what year we're in here now. JKL, I think I don't remember what it was. This is a huge model. It gets a little unruly.
3.9 compared to
So let's see where we are. Okay,
there
so
you go.
there's 18, 17 and 18. So now the combined water and sewer cash projection would be 3.8 million the end of 18, and then going forward from there.
Do we remember what it was? When it was
3.9.
Oh, 3.9, okay.
And it's up to 4.1, 4.7, 5.
So it's going up by $500,000 instead of $1 million.
Yes.
Yeah, it's about 800,000.
Yeah, there, yeah.
So that's what it does if you change it to 4% and keep it at 4%.
But that's 2 years down the road.
Right. If we wanted to
If-
change it.
That's if we
Whatever board wants to change it.
And you'll have in front of you at that time
Right, a
a
better
solid
idea of what-
plan and cost estimate for the water
For the
treatment
water.
plant.
That's just, is this, I've only been on the board for 4 years, so I don't know what happens over 15, but in some ways, we're making up for previous not investing.
Yes. Yep.
Main, replacing of the mains, the water treatment plant has lived its life, so we're on time with that and actually luckily generating some revenue. But say after 4 or 5 years go by and there's an upgrade to the water plant and most of the mains have been replaced and things are in pretty good shape and there's sort of a regular maintenance. I know you can't say, well, that would mean we only need $1 million or only 600,000, but is there ever a time when you just don't have to?
You just jinxed it.
Wrong question.
Well, because things break.
Well, but there's
So
also.
there's that, but then there are things, just the wearing out part,
That's
that's
what it
what is
is.
the breaking.
Right.
May I?
Yeah.
There comes a time when you get on top of that catching up on the infrastructure that the amount that you have to spend each year just to keep the whole system in good operating condition goes down. So because your expenses are going down, you can maintain, whatever we decided was a prudent level, $1 million, $3 million, $5 million, whatever it might be that you don't want to get below because bad surprises can happen and they can be very expensive. But whatever that figure might be, it becomes easier to maintain stability on that figure when we have more stability in the capital plan and less demand on the dollars in the capital plan. So we're some years yet away from that, but
That's
yeah,
nice.
that's exactly the goal.
And that's
Exactly the goal.
when people typically start cutting back on maintenance and stuff.
It was similar,
And then
like
wind
in
up in
the
the same spot again.
in the 80s, we completed the wastewater treatment plant in 1984, and then we did the water treatment plant. So we had a lot of debt, and then after that, then we just did maintenance for quite some time. And then there was kind of, well, the plants are still functioning. In fact, we've got a pretty good lifespan out of the water treatment plant.
Sure.
Their estimated life expectancy is 20 years. So we've done very well.
We're on 30.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we've done really well to keep it going. And sometimes your costs will go up just to keep something that's older maintained, but your costs should start to flatten out somewhat.
But 3 years ago, board, what was the plan? Whoever came up with a 6-2 plan, that we're in the third year of a 5-year
Correct.
journey down
Yes.
this road. What was the plan after that? What's the expected maintenance plan as far as increases? Or is it a flat?
There is no commitment to any particular rate of increase after that.
You have a
And that's why the model will help us as we approach that date and it's time to create a new rate ordinance. The work that we will have done to plan for the water treatment plant project and the modeling to show what it looks like if you stay flat for a few years, what it looks like if you go up by 2 and 2 instead of 6 and 2, or other alternatives. We'll go through that in a much more complex way when it's time to do a new ordinance, so that you can make an informed decision about where you want to land in that balancing act.
Because it was sold as sort of a temporary, this is to get us to where we need to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I hate to have to explain to a ratepayer why it then is not going to
Sure.
snap back to.
We're not suggesting that it needs to keep going up by 6 and 2. What we're suggesting is it's prudent to stay the course for these final 2 years of the current ordinance. And then at that point, make an informed decision about whether it can actually go to flat or whether you might need just smaller increases and not the magnitude of what we've had for this ordinance.
The problem we got into years ago is that we didn't decide to put money away and that we were just trying to put out fires. And that really bit us hard, I think. I mean, from 10 years ago, when we said, let's try to have a 0% increase on everything, and let's just try to maintain, and let's not buy new trucks, and let's let them go 3 more years. It bit us hard about 5 or 6 years
Ran out
ago.
of money.
And so now, I think we're trying to stay away from that. And it hurts in the beginning.
Well, it hurts now. I'll attest to it.
Oh, yeah.
It hurts me
No, it
now.
hurts. It hurts everybody. But I think it's a hurt that it's going to get less and less as we go forward now. Instead of getting that big bite, that big hurt, if say the water treatment plant completely fails, and all of a sudden we got to come up with $12 million. I mean, that's a big bite.
And that 6% is paying off the $34 million
It is.
Right.
bond as well.
Right.
That's
Right.
right. The debt service is built into the expenditure budget
Right.
for the sewer bond.
That was a big bond. It was $34 million. So that
32.8.
32.8.
Yeah, it's 3 fire stations.
And that was the thinking, as I understand it at the time. There are people in the room who participated in that who can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was it was a combination of 3 factors: that there had been some underfunding of the utility, that there was this significant amount of new debt service to pay off with the new bond for $32 million plus, and the desire to build up a fund balance to a higher level so that we had more resiliency in situations like the I-91 pipe.
So, David, to answer your question, would you rather flush your toilet or would you rather have your house burned down? So it's
Put it that
The
way.
reason the reason there's more money than was expected, because I'm on the septic and I get a filter.
Oh, there you go.
Probably more information.
It's only the
We're all over here.
Does anyone in the public have any questions or comments about what we've been talking about?
And can anybody help us decipher it?
Yeah, come on.
I'm reluctant to make comments. I know this has been a really long discussion. And I kind of wanted to put a little plug in for having this long conversation about clean drinking water and thinking about our rivers and whether what we're doing with our wastewater is, being taken care of. So when I look at this spreadsheet, the thing that sticks out to me is the average annual cost to the homeowner. So if I'm reading this right, John, it says $725 a year. That's for wastewater. Is that correct?
Yep.
What about the one for when we turn our taps on? So how much is the dollar value there per year?
160? No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
156.
So,
Yeah.
when Tim's thinking about talking to people who, are disappointed at an increase each year on a daily basis, for clean, drinkable water, it ain't so much.
It's not a bad deal.
It's
one of
good
the
to
better
invest
deals
in
we
a
have.
livable town.
Yeah.
Because Flint, Michigan decided to not invest in that.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing. So I applaud you for taking the time, even though it's taking some time.
Oh, it's really
You still got some.
Sorry.
This is the long item. The rest is
Does anyone else on the board have any questions or comments?
No, thank
Any
you for
questions
putting that
Steve?
together.
Yeah, I would say thank you so much for all of this work, and I think it follows the comprehensive report of town operations, where you clearly said this is the time to invest in infrastructure, and that's the kind of stuff we're going to see coming to us this year from staff, and I'm on board with that.
Thank you.
So
I'm just pleased with the comprehensive amount of information.
So I'm assuming we're not going to make a motion about changing the rates, because I'm assuming we're going to keep
the
it.
budget.
Yeah.
and plan.
Yeah, so all we need to really approve tonight is the budget,
As
updates to the
presented.
budget and plan.
You want a motion?
Yeah, would somebody like to make a motion?
To approve the fiscal year 18 utilities fund budget? Am I in the right one?
Yep, you.
And capital improvement plan.
All right, we have a motion to approve the FY18 utilities fund budget and capital improvement plan. All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All those abstaining?
I'm opposed.
Oh, okay, so, I'm sorry, I went too fast. All those opposed?
Aye. Or nay?
Motion carries 4-1. Doesn't matter. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn as water and sewer commissioners.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn as water and sewer commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? We have adjourned as water and sewer commissioners.
Oh, that was kind of nice, actually. I was enjoying that.
We're on unfinished business, which is the select board goals. We talked about them last meeting, and we had 4 changes to the goals that were proposed initially by the town manager. Under financial matters, we added back in things that we hadn't accomplished in 2016. And then we added a totally new goal, which is staff diversity. And we have it here, consider ways in which the town can promote increased staff diversity while fully complying with all equal employment opportunity laws and other applicable regulations. So I don't know how people feel about the goals. Does anyone have any comments? And again, it's a living, breathing document. So if anyone wants to add a goal along the way, we can do it.
It feels like a marriage. Like it's hard to jump into it and like commit.
Right. And if we don't, and again, some of us who've been on the board for a while, there have been years where we didn't, because of things that happened, we didn't reach the goals and nothing bad happens to us, So I don't want people to feel scared about improving goals.
It's good to have goals.
It is something to shoot for.
I think that these are well written out and I feel good about them. I like the way the staff diversity is worded. I like the energy efficiency and sustainability section. Everything looks reasonable to me. I guess we could turn it into a 3-page document if we wanted to. I certainly have.
Maybe our goals. Our goals should be to have fewer goals.
But I don't. Yeah, I don't want to.
I have a comment, and it doesn't have to turn into a new goal, but I just wanted to throw it out because it's something I was considering for proposing as a goal. Over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of discussions about panhandling in town, and I've heard it from a lot of different people. A lot of great perspectives are going on in our media, and not only on social media, but in the comments especially. There was a lot of back and forth. Has everybody been kind of keeping up on some of this? So I don't know if it's a goal or not, but I would love to, and I will commit myself to helping to encourage some groups in town to get together to start to really talk about it, because everybody I talk to has a very strong feeling about it, but not necessarily really great data, or they have strong feelings, but not
No good solution.
well, what I'm saying is not a really great set of data that everybody's looking at. That kind of, is it really bad here, for instance, versus everywhere else in our United States? Is it outsiders? Because I've heard this comment a lot from people, that it's people coming in because they are able to make money doing this, and aren't necessarily homeless or in need, etc. So there's a lot of sort of accusations being thrown around, and in light of our more recent, pledge for compassion, I think it would be great to try to bring in groups like Groundworks and DBA and have a discussion. And I'm not really advocating that we're adding a lot of work, because we have a lot of work already and important things we have to take care of. But I just wanted to get the conversation rolling to have this board reflect some of the conversation in the community, because it's a really important one.
I'm really glad that you're bringing this up. And I think I definitely would commit some of my time to attend collaborative meetings such as that. And the only thing I would add or augment is I kind of want to look at what's, rather than, panhandling as kind of that word, like what's going on? What is the distress that's happening in this community? Is there distress? Like you said, is it something insidious, like people coming in to make money, or what is the actual distress? What's going on underneath that? And as long as these groups are willing to have those conversations and not just arg, why is this happening? I would definitely be at that table.
Yeah, and I think it might be instructive to talk to the people who are already dealing with it, just like you said, because Chief Fitzgerald has been involved with the downtown organization. There were a group of landlords who Patrick and the chief and I had lunch with the other day, because there's not only the downtown organization, there's a downtown merchants group that meets. So there is a lot of conversation out there, and the chief has been extremely good in explaining, what people can do and can't do. And I think he has a handle, as good a handle as I think anybody, along with Groundworks, on who we're talking about here. And I think there are assumptions that people make that aren't necessarily correct when we walk down the street. So it is something, and we probably could, just get on the same page and know, because there is a lot of work going on around this, and I can attest to the amount of time that the chief spends going to meetings and things like that. But it is an issue that people talk about. So.
Yeah. And I agree, and I like the idea of, I know that there's a lot of work going on in groups, and I think it's just important that one of us be, that it come into our purview too, and we be there.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, how do people feel? Is that a goal, just to increase discussion, or what?
I'm fine with just bringing it up. I mean, I don't even know if we have to have a goal. Have to have it written in paper. I just think let's start getting it going.
But if you two in particular want to look into it and come back and share information, I think it fits into the one thing that I noticed about the goals. The fifth one under financial, talking about select board outreach and dialogue, about economic development and business climate. And then down in public outreach, it says again, outreach. To increase social media, keep residents informed, and update and improve the town's website, using those tools as well as not just improving the business climate, but also for getting information out and getting information in about this. I was struck in I think it was in the article in the Commons about the town where I don't know the scope of it or who actually does it, but somebody from the town goes around and says, finds someone's panic, and they say, actually, we have some work that needs to be done in the park, and we can pay you. Would you like to come and do that? Is a much better approach to it. Again, we're going to run it by Mr. Fisher and find out what what the issues are, the liabilities and such. But it's just, there's a lot of good thinking going on, and a lot of solutions. There are steps that can be taken.
That's a great way to bring people in.
And it's important.
I think the business community should come in.
Chief, is there anything you think we can do, or?
It's a long discussion.
We're not going to solve it.
No, but how we should approach it.
Everyone bringing this to light. These conversations have been going on for years, and basically what we need to do is all these organizations with these really good ideas, we need to get out of the silos and come together and collaborate. And Josh and Michelle do an outstanding job.
Yep.
We just need to keep the momentum going. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and this discussion is definitely the way to keep it going.
Good.
Yeah, and one of the things, we don't have to reinvent the wheel as a select board, because there's a whole bunch of people out there who are working on this, and I've been in so many meetings.
Just need to get them together.
And they are. This is the thing. They come together, and it's hard. We don't. And as Tim said, we don't have to solve this now. But I don't think the select board has to. Again, I said reinvent the wheel, because it is being discussed on so many levels, and I think there have been a lot of people within the business community that have, been educated mainly because the chief comes to the meetings, and Peter actually came to a meeting, and, you know, it's getting everybody to understand what the problem is and that there are people working on the solution. And I think we can maybe have people come in and talk to
Well,
us
that's the
about what
thing,
they're doing.
to give them a format to talk.
Yes.
And that's what I meant by getting them together, is getting them together in this room
Yeah.
and saying, okay, let's
Yep.
spitball here. and let's see what-
It's quite similar, sorry to
No, go.
interrupt,
I'm done.
similar to the discussion on the opiate crisis that is happening everywhere. But I just feel like I'd love it if this board can acknowledge it and be a catalyst as much as we can, and not feel how somehow that we can't be a participant and a driver in some really good solutions. So.
And that's where that goal page changes. You know, where we said, you know, you don't always have to have them written down. It's just,
Right.
may not even be a goal,
Yeah.
it's just, it's a topic. And let's act on it, yeah.
Okay.
We're bringing that up.
Need a motion?
Oh, wait, don't ask the
Oh.
public if they have anyone in the public have any thing to say about what our goals are. Okay, John, you want to make a motion?
Sure, why not? To approve the 2017-18 annual Select Board Goals as presented.
We have a motion to approve the 2017-18 annual Select Board Goals as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? The goals are approved 5-0.
That was a hard one for me. My hands are sweating.
All right, it's our, I keep saying annual, but it's our regular police fire facilities project update.
Thank you. The police station is moving along really fast. We still expect that in August of this year, the police department will move in and begin operating from 62 Black Mountain Road. And so you see the list. I won't go through each different type of system that's getting installed. But for anybody in the public who wants to see the update, it's available on the website. And suffice it to say that there's a beehive of activity, both especially inside, but also to some degree outside the building at this point as they continue on towards just a couple of months from now, getting to completion. We have a couple of items related to the police project that I'll address at the end, where we are requesting funding authorization for items that are outside the scope of the contractor's, the construction manager's contract. I'll get to those after the update. Then at the Central Fire Station, similar progress. Of course, the largest of the three projects, and it will continue on until November of this year. So there's still quite a long way to go, but very noticeable progress continuing, especially as you see the outside of the building looking more finished. So the walls are up and the roofing work is largely completed, and there is a lot of work going on inside as well with the major systems of the building. The more minor expenses that I approve, items less than $10,000, there's a handful of those. I believe it's 5 items that are new to that list this time. No items of any significance to note there, except one that is a credit. So I just wanted to note that when we buy the builder's risk insurance, it's just the way it's packaged and sold that you buy, it's an annual premium. And so for the 2 project elements that are taking less than a year to construct, we'll actually receive a credit back. This is the credit, what's shown in this week's report is the credit for the West Brattleboro Fire Station project, and we will receive a similar credit for the police station project when that is complete. Financially, we currently have $820,662 of uncommitted balance. And just to refresh your recollection, the uncommitted balance is the money that has not actually been obligated through a contract to anyone, minus the $150,000 that has been set aside for the purchase and installation of generators at all 3 sites, emergency generators. So we're referring to that as the uncommitted balance. That's a little better than $820,000 right now. We are asking today for your authorization that we proceed with buying the dispatching equipment and the dispatching furnishings for the police station. $71,917 for dispatch equipment, $25,831.86 for dispatch furnishings. The two together are a little better than $97,000 worth of cost to the project. There was $100,000 that was actually allocated to outfitting the dispatch operation in the project budget. So this is this $97,000 would be expended against that $100,000 budget line item. This is not actually contingency or other expenses. However, the $16,400 that we're asking for the police station radio tower is one of those other expenses that was not actually allocated within the budget for the project, could have been included within the overall guaranteed maximum price for the construction, except the details were not well enough known at the time that we signed the contract with DEW for the guaranteed maximum price, and so this is something that's been priced separately. If you want further details beyond what's in the written materials, Steve Horton is here, our owner's project manager, and can address in any greater detail that you'd care to hear about why we're asking for those three items at this time and in the particular amounts that we're asking for.
Does anyone on the board have any questions?
Wayne, you getting a new chair?
No, I'm taking the one from here.
Okay.
He stands up all day anyway.
Attaboy, attaboy. That's why we love you, buddy.
So any questions?
No.
Comments? Anyone in the public have any questions or comments on the report or the expenditures that we're being asked to approve? Sounds like it. Anyone want to make the motion?
That we approve the utilities fund budget. I move we approve expenditures for dispatch equipment in the amount of $71,917. Dispatch furnishings in the amount of $25,831.86. And radio tower in the amount of $16,400 for the police station construction project.
All right, we have a motion to approve dispatch equipment, dispatch furnishings, and a radio tower for the police station construction project. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was glad it's almost done. Now we have the monthly finance report from Don O'Connor.
Favorite time of the year.
Thank you, Kate. In the report is the April financial report. And as of the end of April, we were 83.3% of the way through the year. And after making the prorations that we make every month for insurance and human services and annual lease and note payments, which are annual payments, we would bring the expenditures down to 78.0%. So we're doing well in the general fund. And the expectation is that we will do better than budget this year. The utilities fund was at 79.9%. And the parking fund was at 86.2% of their annual budget. So parking's expenditures were up a little bit, but their revenues are also up. If you look at the detailed report for the parking fund, you'll see that they also are doing better than budget on a bottom line basis. Solid waste, we have the expenditures and revenues through the month of April. And expenditures were at 74.9%, so they're running pretty close to what we would have expected. And revenues were only at 68%. And our bag revenues for trash are down. Definitely, we're selling less bags than we had expected to sell this year. And we'll address that when we get to the budget for the solid waste fund. And Peter will explain what we're going to propose that we do
double-edged sword
to adjust for that.
It is.
The loan report shows that we had $4,052,358 in loans outstanding, and we're now down to only one loan that was overdue, and one loan that is in default, but that's fully reserved for. So one of the two loans that we had seen month after month has been paid off in full. And so we have one individual that's a little bit behind and continues to make payments, but probably will not catch up. Program income, we're showing $458,384 in available funds for additional grants and loans as of the end of April. And then finally, we have the grant report as part of the financial report. And there's various information on 48 active grants and 10 grants that are currently in the application process. And there's a lot of detailed information on each of those grants. And that is basically the report from me. And if you have any specific questions on line items in these budgets, I'll certainly try to answer them for you.
Does anyone have any questions for John?
No, I'll be curious to hear more about bags.
Let's get to the good stuff. Does anyone in the public have any questions about the monthly finance report? It looks like we're doing okay.
Okay, we're doing well.
Yeah.
We're doing well.
Yeah, if we could hold on to 5% difference in expenses and budgeted, that would be very nice.
Yep.
John, what do we have in the fund balance at this point, or the, our rainy day fund?
Unassigned fund balance?
Unassigned fund balance.
I'm thinking it was close to $2 million.
Okay,
In that range.
so it's crept up a little.
Well, we won't know until the end
Exactly,
of the year
right.
where it's going to be,
Right.
but yeah, it's in that range.
Yep,
So
we're still safe.
we're going to do better than we budgeted this year.
That's what I thought.
And so we budgeted on to use some of that fund balance this year. We will use less of it than we budgeted for. So the expectation is that we will do better and we won't use as much fund balance as we had thought we would need.
That's exactly correct. But there are two separate items on tonight where we're going to talk about actually using some of the expected surplus before we get to year end because of some things that have come up that we need to address. So one in just a moment and then the bags a little later on.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Always riveting.
Thank you, John.
Now we're going to talk about a subordination agreement with Whetstone Station. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the old thing. We got the added item on the agenda, which is the Living Memorial Park swimming pool renovation. And there was an issue as they were fixing what they were going to fix. They found something else. So Peter, you can explain.
I will.
Or Carol's here.
Carol is here. I'll give a summary, and then, as always, if you'd like more detail, Carol certainly can jump in and address that. First of all, I apologize for the late breaking news aspect of this. The only reason that we're before you tonight and not on June 6th is that if we had waited until June 6th, this situation only arose yesterday. And if we had waited until June 6th to address it in a normal, more methodical, more business-like manner, we would have lost half of our summer for the kids and the families at the pool. And so in order to not have a mid-July opening of the pool, but instead stay on target for mid-June, we've hurried to bring this before you tonight. The issue that has arisen is some of the work that was done. This was this first phase of work is the fixing of the leakage out of the pool and the modification to the bottom drain for safety reasons, and repair of concrete all around the inside of the walls of the pool. Some of that concrete repair has failed over the course of the winter, and we can't give you a good, complete, satisfying reason why. That's still being investigated by the engineer, and we will get to the bottom of it, and we will address with the engineer and the contractor responsibility for it. I think there's a conversation to be had around who could have and should have seen this coming, but what we understand has happened is some moisture got in behind the wall and created some expansion and contraction with the freezing and unfreezing that has caused some of the concrete repair at the top of the pool wall to fail. The estimate is that up to $20,000 will be required in order to actually fix the part that was already done last year that now needs to be redone. The remedial work is on the order of $20,000. We will first off attempt to keep the actual cost of that work to less than that if possible. It is a conservative figure because, again, with the nature of the emergency timing of this, we didn't want to get a not to exceed authorization from you tonight and then not be able to live within the numbers. So first of all, it is a conservative figure. We hope and expect to do better. And then, we also don't know that the town is actually going to have to bear this cost, or certainly at least have to bear all of it because of the shared responsibility. So we'll be addressing that further with the parties. But what we have is the relatively small amount of work that still needs to be finished that was always expected to be done as a spring. Was this outcome not foreseen when we took the hiatus for the winter?
I have absolutely no problem with, doing this quicker. Absolutely not, because you have to protect what we have. And that makes all the sense in the world,
Sort it out after.
Yeah, and then we'll sort it out after, but it's a little bit of a red flag for me, that's all. Yep. But I have no problem with expediting this and putting the money towards that.
I'm sorry this happened, Carol. That must have been very stressful. I mean, it's happening to all, but it really happened to you.
Oh, this pool is
I'm sorry.
It's only 6 years old.
Oh, geez.
57, renovated in the late 80s.
Oh.
So do we have a motion?
Okay, so I want to just make one comment, and I asked this to Peter, just in case probably no one's thinking about this but me. My question was, we don't know how much it's going to cost. We're just assuming, and were we rushing this because we had I don't want to say artificial date on when we wanted the pool open? And could we get more information about this if we didn't open on, we opened a week later? And your explanation to me was, no.
Right. So
that's a good explanation.
So the answer to that is, if it was to be just a week's delay, then you'd have to have a special meeting for the sole purpose of considering this item.
Right.
And I'm not sure that in just a week we could have sufficient information anyway to really have a proper full telling of the story in front of you. I do feel confident that we could be on that mark or close to that mark by 3 weeks from now, but that pushes the opening of the pool well into July. And given that we have a short summer swimming season as it is because of our climate, it just didn't make sense to us to wait on this. It made sense to us to declare the emergency and bring it before you tonight.
Does that make sense, everybody?
I see what you're saying, I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
I think this thing has to.
Oh, no, I agree. I was just trying to say, are we rushing it artificially? But the answer is no, we're not.
We're rushing it, but not
Rushing-
artificially.
Not just to rush it.
In fact, we would always not rush something like this if we could avoid it.
Yeah. Does anyone in the public have any questions about the improvements to the swimming pool? No? They would like to make a motion?
To authorize the town manager to expend an amount not to exceed $20,000 for remedial work on Phase 1 of the Living Memorial Park Swimming Pool renovation project.
All right, we have a motion to authorize the town manager to spend an amount not to exceed $20,000 for the remedial work on the Memorial Park Swimming Pool renovation project. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll get back to.
Thank you.
Good luck,
Thank you, Carol.
Go forth.
The subordination agreement with Whetstone Station. If everybody remembers, it was the last meeting or the 2 meetings ago when Whetstone Station came in and we gave them a loan. And so they've got the loan. This is just our standing in if we ever, something goes bad and we want to get the loan back. So Peter can explain.
Yeah, so the town's in the second position. The bank is in the first position. The town's in the second position regarding the loan. And Whetstone Station is refinancing the bank portion of their funding. And so There will be a different bank that is in first position, will remain in second position.
Third, actually.
Sorry?
Aren't we in third?
I was told it was in second. We're in third.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Beat is second.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. Right. The state is in second position and we're in third position. But the point of this is that twofold. Number one, we take this risk all the time because it is program income money. We always are in the bottom position. And even when we feel we're taking a greater risk, we understand that the commercial lenders are ahead of us. But I think more important than that, even in this instance, is while nothing is a sure bet, this is certainly a safer bet. This is an established business that has paid us back on a previous loan, timely and completely. And so the staff was already recommending in the backup materials before you that this subordination agreement be approved. And now the committee, the Small Business Assistance Loan Committee, has unanimously also made the same recommendation.
Yep. Just one little anecdote about that. The Small Business Assistance Program is to assist small businesses for their growth and expansion. And sometimes that spills over into other things you wouldn't anticipate. And this was a really interesting one. They're planning a food truck, which they would use in town and also at their campground in Dummerston, which they're doing a lot of investment and expansion in. And they were contacted by a tiny house company from Putney who is working with them to figure out how to build a tiny house trailer instead of using a food truck. So they would locate it someplace or locate it someplace else. And because it's Whetstone Station and they make beer, because it's a trailer and it's in place rather than a vehicle, they may be able to vend their beverage products from it as well. And then we start thinking about and then set it up to vend for the Tiny House Festival. And it's just the synergy of when one company expands, when one company has some growth, that it affects others around. In this case, a small company in Putney that's finding their way around. And it's going to be to the benefit of everyone. So it's an interesting little development that we found out about at the committee meeting.
So we're going to have a beer cart? Beer trailer.
Tiny house beer trailer.
Wow.
Art,
I'm all for that.
Are there any more questions or comments on the subordination agreement with Whetstone Station?
I would just note, I think because it's not in front of you tonight, it would still be appropriate for your action to be subject to Town Attorney Fisher's approval. But I can tell you he has looked at the subordination agreement and has approved it.
Okay, and that's in the motion too, when it has been approved by the town attorney.
Yep.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request from Whetstone Station Associates LLC to subordinate its small business assistance program mortgage and authorize the town manager to execute the subordination agreement when it has been approved by the town attorney.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the request for Whetstone Station's subordination agreement and to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement when it has been approved by the town attorney. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? The motion carries 5-0. Next up is the Aquatic Nuisance Control Grant for $1,560. And I'm assuming you'll explain what this is.
Sure. This is funding from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation Watershed Management Program to help us control nuisances in Sunset Lake and one other location in town. So, I'm sorry?
The Pleasant Valley?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is Pleasant Valley, and I'm saying I saw it, but I don't see it here. I'm sorry. But in any event, it's a grant we've received before. It's an ongoing program of nuisance control, and we recommend your approval of the $1,560 grant.
Anyone have any questions?
It looks like both Connecticut and West Rivers, South Pond, and Sunset Lake.
Okay. Oh, there we are. Thank you. Sorry. I knew I'd seen
it's
it.
right
I couldn't
there.
locate it.
It was in the most obvious place. That's why we all missed it. Like right here.
Right
So
there.
obvious.
Okay. Body of water. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Anyone in the public have any questions about the aquatic nuisance grant? Would someone like to make a motion?
I move we accept and appropriate the 2017 Aquatic Nuisance Control Grant from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation Watershed Management Program in the amount of $1,560.
All right, we have a motion to accept and appropriate the 2017 Aquatic Nuisance Control Grant in the amount of $1,560. All those opposed? All those in favor of the motion? Getting tired. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carries 5-0. Next up is the Governor's Highway Safety Program grant for $18,637.75. And this is to the Governor's Highway Safety Program through the Vermont Agency of Transportation.
It is, and this one's an application, not an accept and appropriate, although it is one that we're very confident of receiving. It's one of these standard programs where the state dispenses money to local governments for various purposes. This purpose is for highway safety enforcement by the police department for things like DUI and seatbelt, the click it or ticket program and those sorts of things. It pays for the overtime of the officers so that we can keep more officers out on the road doing traffic control and enforcement. So this is the second one for this evening where we came up on the deadline before the meeting, and so I'm asking that you ratify. I've approved submission of this grant application, and we're asking for you to ratify my action.
Does anyone on the board have any questions about that? Or anyone in public? So do we have to, the reason I was hesitating, so do we have to have the motion say to
That's what I wondered.
because we just have right now to approve a grant application. Do we have to amend that
I think
in
that's
any way?
fine.
Okay. Okay.
I move to approve the grant application for a Governor's Highway Safety Grant from the Vermont Agency of Transportation in the amount of $18,637.75.
Okay, we have a motion to approve a grant of $18,637, or grant application, $18,637.75.
I think they'd round up,
I know.
but they don't.
I don't. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carries 5-0. Next up is the Brattleboro Local Emergency Operations Plan, and we have to approve this. And this is something done annually that needs to be sent to the state.
That's right. And Chief Bukasi is here. In addition to being our fire chief, he's also our emergency management coordinator, the keeper of the plan, and he coordinates the training for our town team to stay fresh and ready on the various things that are addressed in the plan. So this is a long, detailed document. It's a very operations-oriented document. It gets changed usually in very minor ways. We update lists, so that the contact information, those kinds of things stay current, and sometimes make small changes in the actual procedures in the plan when that's warranted. A couple of years ago, or within the last couple of years, we actually made a more substantial change when the radiological plan that had been separate in the town actually became an annex, one of the annexes to this emergency operations plan. So what's before you this evening is to approve that the update that staff has completed be submitted to the state in compliance with the requirement that we annually send them our updated plan.
Does anyone on the board have any questions? Do we get any money because if we fill this in, or it doesn't matter?
Do we get any money?
Yeah, I mean, is there any funding that goes along with us putting a plan
We
in?
actually tie this plan to a lot of grants that we
Yeah,
get.
okay.
If we don't submit a plan, then we aren't eligible for grants.
Yeah.
Right.
Rod.
Rod had it.
By having an emergency operation plan, we are eligible for a greater geographic rate. So in case of an emergency, we get paid out by the state at a higher rate.
So it's good for planning, but it's also good for the wallet, so.
Correct.
Yeah. Does anyone on the board or anyone in the public have any questions about the emergency operations plan?
Kate, the only other thing I would say is I know you're voting on something that some of you haven't seen. You're more than welcome to come to my office and look at the plan. Talk about it, I'll answer any questions.
You want to give us a Reader's Digest version? No, I don't want you to give us a Reader's Digest version of it. You're welcome.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion to adopt the plan?
Sure. I move to adopt the 2017 Brattleboro Emergency Operations Plan and authorize the town manager to certify its adoption.
All right, we have a motion to adopt the 2017 Brattleboro Emergency Operations Plan. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carries 5-0.
I want you to know that I've been making a lot of motions, so I want to.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
You're gone.
Pacing yourself.
Pick up the ball down that end.
All right.
Okay?
I thought about it twice.
Yeah,
but-
you have.
We were alone doing this a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
so-
Don't feel sorry for John. Next up is a contract for a parking study, a downtown parking study, which we're being asked to approve. Rod Francis
I'm pretty excited.
is going to tell us all about it.
What are they going to study about parking, Ron?
Hello.
Has it ever happened before?
Sorry, John, what was that question?
What are they going to do about
Count cars.
count cars?
Yeah, basically.
Huh.
So we haven't had a parking study since the construction of the parking garage.
Right.
We had a series of demand studies that established the need for the parking garage, but we haven't really analyzed downtown parking since then. And what we do know anecdotally is that use patterns and behaviors have changed quite a bit downtown, and we expect them to change more in the future. And the other thing that's changed significantly is the kind of technology that you would use to enforce parking requirements and also to facilitate customers using public parking spaces efficiently in a way that's satisfying. So it's a kind of a competitive element to some extent for downtown to have an appropriate and pleasant and efficient parking system. And so the parking study would actually look at the patterns of the current patterns of parking, where people park, why they're parking, where they're parking, how long they park for, the technology that we currently use and it is available to us in the future for enforcement and for managing the parking, and the overall condition of the parking structures and service lots and on-street parking, including the meters. The consultant firm that we chose has expertise with the kinds of equipment that we currently use, and cities larger than this and towns smaller than ours. We're probably at the bottom end of a town that it's worth actually having a parking system implemented.
Sounds like we could be opening up a can of worms, though.
Parking and signs are the two things in planning that cause the most consternation and distress.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've done signs, that was last year, and so now we're doing parking because we just love that kind of thing.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're
I have a question.
Sure.
worried.
Can you speak a little bit about how bike parking will factor into this study?
Yeah, in fact, that is one of the considerations for the consultant to review. Right now, we have a substantial commitment to vehicle parking, and we don't have a significant commitment to bicycle parking.
Right.
And so one of the things that we want to try and establish is, are all the surface lots that the town owns being utilized heavily? And is there any space available for any other alternate use? And similarly, if we felt that there was enough demand for bicycle parking in a metered parking space, what are our options there? There are ways of testing that out, including pop-up bike parking, and which means that you would just temporarily reassign a car parking space as a bike parking space and see how many people park their bike there. And then there are engineering shops that will make to order, or have already got designs established so that you can convert an existing parking space to a bike parking rack and just slots into the existing parking space. Burlington's got a couple of those. And so the consultant has been asked to review what scope there is for improving accommodation for bike and pedestrian use as part of the parking system.
Thank you very much.
And what's the timing on this, Rod? Like, when would it begin and end, or is it just sort of? Is that just?
We're already wincing because it's a bit late. It'll get started in terms of background data collection in June, and then we expect to be able to measure parking patterns in summer and then in the fall once school resumes in the fall. And so there'll be a series of public outreach processes that sort of map onto both those seasonal things. And so there'll be a lull in August, which goes along with the lull everybody else is having, including parking in town. And then we'll pick up again in September. We expect it's all going to be done by December. Yeah, believe me.
And the $6,000 or whatever it is match is going to come from the parking fund?
No.
Where does it come from?
I don't know why not. That's a good idea, actually. No.
Oh, planning. Oh, sorry, Rod.
He may try to sneak it into that.
It's like
though.
maybe it could be a reimbursement.
Yeah, it's all right. I wish I had thought of that.
Is that because
no,
it's a
okay.
municipal planning grant? I mean, why can't it be parking fund? Is there like a?
Typically, we either use program funds or assigned funds within planning if we know we're going to do it. So through when we plan it, when we scope out that we're going to apply for a planning grant like this, we actually make an allocation, a commitment to that. So it's our shop.
It's right there. Okay.
So that's the way. I mean, in the simplest term, it's our problem. I think the other exciting part about this study at this point is that Brattleboro was an early adopter of smart cards, and the uptake was relatively good amongst people that have, long-term parking system users in Brattleboro. But the technology has marched on, and so we're also hoping that this consultant can guide us to phone-based apps and a bunch of other technologies that are now more common for operating parking systems with. And so we'll be getting guidance and recommendations from him on that as well.
$15,000. Did these five people call each other up? Because these bids are like within pennies.
They all knew the grant program and they all knew the limit.
They did?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's,
Yeah.
There were two finalists that were very difficult to select between.
Yeah.
I just don't want to beat a dead horse, but I just thought of something, even though it's what I'm about to say is irrelevant and will not move the conversation. But we're doing a study about the wastewater treatment plant, and that comes out of the utility fund. Why doesn't this is a parking study, why doesn't it come out of the parking fund?
So,
I mean, I just don't want to beat it to death because
Sure.
and it's 8:30, so we don't have to talk about it now, but it's just something.
well, there's a short answer, which is the purpose of doing this particular study is that it's a prerequisite to a downtown master plan that's part of the overall town plan implementation.
Okay.
It really is fundamentally a planning effort. It just is a piece that relates to parking. It's not something that just in the operation of the parking enforcement system in town we would have undertaken except as part of a planning effort.
Right.
Is it just semantics too?
No, but it's just sort of weird to
Right.
me that like this is ultimately going to inform how we do parking downtown, which means we may change the lots or something. And if we do that, that'll come out of the parking fund, I would assume. But we don't have to talk about this at 8:25.
Yeah, I mean, I would just underscore what Peter said. It's better seen as a chapter in a larger document called the Downtown Master Plan.
I'm
And
just
so
trying to
therefore,
help you, Rod.
I appreciate it, and I think you should ask Patrick for at least a contribution. He's up next.
I have one more question. Is this the kind of thing that would take into consideration whether or not we needed more parking spaces available for electric cars? Or is that something that's outside of the scope of this particular?
It's not entirely out of the scope. Brattleboro actually is bit of a leader in
Yeah.
commitment to electronic vehicle charging stations as well. There are 2 in the parking garage and then 2 in the Highgrove lot. And the land use regulations are consistent with the new state regulations, which makes it a requirement that when there's new development, it's if you have an off-street parking lot of more than 20 spaces, you have to provide at least 1 EV station. So what I'd say over time is we expect a transition to more EV spaces, and we've got a sense from operating the surface lots where we've got power and how we can do that. We look to incorporate that as part of the future planning process, but I don't think it's a pivotal thing for this study. It's just an observation that we expect more of those and less gasoline-powered cars in the future.
Right, thank you.
And an example of the impact of the new land use regulation requiring a charging station for each certain number of parking spaces is that we'll have one at the new police station because we'll have 2 at the high sign from Raleigh. The number of spaces in that lot that's being reconstructed as part of the police station project will call for 2 charging stations there.
That really opens a lot of conversations for vehicle purchases in the future. I like that. That's great.
Okay, does anyone else have any more questions about the parking study? Does anyone in the public have any questions about the parking study grant? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a, wait, where is it? Okay, I'll make a motion to award the bid for consultant services to Desmond Inc. in the amount of $25,825 to undertake a downtown parking study.
We have a motion to award a bid to undertake a downtown parking study. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? The motion carries 5-0.
Thanks a lot.
And Rod, I'm going to get you that 6,000.
Thanks so much. So even 5-5 would be good.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of parking and money, the capital improvement parking budget, we need to adopt or look at adopting the FY18 parking budget.
Good evening. So there are 3 things I'm hoping to walk the board through here in the next couple of minutes. The first is, of course, the proposed fiscal 18 parking fund operational budget. I want to speak briefly to where we see the year-end cash balance in this particular enterprise fund landing, and then finally make a couple of recommendations for fiscal 18 capital improvements within the parking fund assets. As you'll see in the attached proposed fiscal 18 budget, we foresee revenues at $875,000 and expenses at roughly $822,000, and anticipate approximately $52,000 surplus for fiscal 18 operational activities. Revenues are largely the same as they've been in past years. There's a couple of interesting exceptions. Rent is, of course, going up by virtue of the lease agreements we have with Dottie's and Experience Goods down at the transportation center. Permits are up to better reflect the fact that parking is in higher demand than it has been in previous years, and that's true system-wide. Anecdotally, I think it's safe to say that this is largely a consequence of improvements at the Brooks House and the operations that are going on there, and the colleges that are putting higher demand on the Highgrove lot and the transportation center, which are pushing other members of the parking public further out into the system. For example, this year, for the first time in my time here at Town of Brattleboro, Elm Street parking lot sold out for one of its quarters. So there's really an increased demand for available parking in the downtown, and that's why it's noted here in the revenues. And the last thing on the revenue side of real consequence is the line item for bond interest. And what this is when municipalities bond in the state of Vermont, they go through a process with the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank. As a participant in a pooled bonding program, we don't have the ability to refinance, but the state does. And when they do, the benefits of that refinancing accrue to the members that bought in on that bond. So, and that's shown as a revenue line for reasons I can't altogether explain, but John will, I'm sure, if you have questions about that. But needless to say, from the operating standpoint of the parking fund, it shows as a supplementary revenue source, and it's a consequence of the refinancing of that bond. On the expense side, staff increases are going up by virtue of the collective bargaining agreements that have been previously approved. Retirement is going down. This is a consequence of the transition to VEMRs that we put in place last year, and so this is happening organization-wide and certainly within the parking fund as well. That's the retirement program. We had previously been in a direct contribution program with a fairly high level of commitment from the town. The transition to the new state VEMRs program has the town contributing substantially less, and so that's a savings that accrues here in the parking fund as well. And then the transfer out of the parking fund is going up in ways it hasn't done in the past, and that's because the board had previously approved a supplementary transfer from the parking fund to the general fund to help compensate the general fund for the purchase of the street sweeper, because the street sweeper spends a good amount of time sweeping up the parking lots. Are there any particular questions about the revenues or expenses in the operating budget?
I hate to keep everybody up, but John, I've never seen bond interest in the revenue side of a budget before. So I wonder if...
Yeah, it's a real odd way that they do it, but it's due to the refinancing. And evidently, when these bonds were refinanced, the interest that was paid in the past, the savings from the refinancing exceeded the interest that was accrued or paid in the past. I don't know much more about it. I could contact the bond bank and get a better explanation for you, but we've not seen this in the past, and I'm not real sure exactly how they do it, but there is a benefit accruing to the town as a result of this refinancing.
But we won't see it again in coming years.
Well, we will see the same thing next year for the next couple of years. Yeah, looking at the way that refinancing took place.
Because so much interest is in the beginning part, the beginning years.
Right.
Huh. Fascinating.
Yeah,
no kidding.
Does anyone have any questions on the budget before Patrick moves on to the capital plan? Okay.
So the parking fund is, of course, the town's other enterprise fund, and so it's important to make sure and keep a certain amount of resources within the fund so as to be able to ensure that the fund can cover its expense obligations. And so John's done a little projection, and we think that the fund is going to conclude this year with a $335,000 cash balance. We're making a recommendation in a moment for capital improvements that total $175,000, and that leaves approximately 20% of the expense budget in the fund to cover unforeseen expenses that could arise next year. So that's approximately where we see the fund ending up. And then lastly, I'd like to talk a little bit about the two proposed items under the capital program for fiscal 18. The first one involves some relatively urgently needed improvements to the Brattleboro Transportation Center. If anyone's been up on the top floor, the masonry wall on the northern end of the building is in really, really deteriorated and rough shape. This has been something which has been developing over the years. We've been monitoring it. If your board may recall, we had an engineer come out and take a look at it a couple of years ago because we were really concerned about the structural integrity of the wall. We received some relief that the structural integrity is okay, but there is obviously a need to do some pretty serious improvements. We struck up a conversation with DEW, who is, of course, our contractor on the police and fire facilities. They were involved with the original construction. Not so much McMillan, who is primarily working on our buildings today, but the parent company, DEW, was the general contractor for this project back in 2004. And so we've had some ongoing conversations with them about the condition of the northern wall. I think we all agree it's deteriorating a little faster than we might like it to. DEW is also quick to point out that the most likely culprit here is also rough handling during snow removal off the upper floors of the transportation center. We've taken a look at what needs to happen, and DEW has graciously offered to provide some resources to us at their cost. We've taken a look at what these improvements would run if we were to competitively bid this work. We anticipate that being somewhere in the neighborhood of $45,000 to $50,000. And we think with the conversation we've had with DEW that work can be completed, again, at their cost for less than $20,000. We're estimating roughly $18,000. So that's the first component of the capital program for fiscal 18. And the second component would be to fully implement the recommended energy saving measures that were outlined in the 2016 municipal energy audits for the Brattleboro Transportation Center. That package of investments is actually 5 individual investments, but are sort of put together as a particular package for the purpose of documenting the proposed savings that the town could realize. I'll just walk briefly through them and then talk a little bit about what we anticipate in terms of long-term savings within the fund. There's $2,500 in there for air sealing, and this is anything from making sure that the what's the stuff that goes around a door to keep the air from coming in and out, John?
Insulation.
Weather strip, that kind of stuff. So there's a combination of weather stripping and just everything that can be done that will keep the conditioned space separate from the unconditioned space. There's $66,000 and change in there for a transition to wood heat. The Brattleboro Transportation Center is currently a user of fuel oil to heat the space. There's $15,000 in there for enhanced controls to provide greater adaptability and flexibility. The proprietary system that is in there today doesn't have the ability for the town to change the settings in any way. So this will provide for new and improved and updated controls. There's $23,000 in there for window quilts and $43,000 in there to insulate the masonry of the building that lies between the conditioned space and the exterior walls of the structure.
Patrick,
how much was that?
last one?
$43,000.
43.
For a total of ballpark, $155,000. Now, there's a couple of things I'd like to say about the proposed.
Wait, what's the 43 again?
$43,000 is to insulate masonry walls.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. Taken as a group, which is how it was prepared through all of the municipal energy audits in all of the locations. Margaret took the time to package together certain groupings of energy saving activities and to provide cost-saving estimates to the town based on enacting the entire group. In her report, Margaret details that the town should reasonably expect over a 20-year term a savings of $230,000. Now that's a net savings after or above and beyond once the cost of the project has already been paid for. There would be a $230,000 savings over 20 years if these improvements were fully implemented.
These 5 things.
Yep.
Okay.
I would also add a couple of things. That number rises to $280,000 if the project is paid for in cash because the financing costs would go away.
Can I stop you for 1 second? where does the pellet burner come in all this?
The pellet burner was a second item.
66,
That was
so-
66,000 and,
Oh, I was going to say 60. I had it 6,600. I'm like, you got to be kidding
oh,
me.
I'm sorry, no, it's
66.
66.
And can I ask you a question about
Sure,
that?
of course.
Is that our cost or is that the cost of the burner? The stove, whatever.
Can I say that that is our cost? But can I also get back to that in a moment? Because I think I want to add something to that.
Okay.
That is a net cost to town of Brattleboro after certain incentives have been provided by the Wyndham Wood Heat project. So, getting back to what Margaret indicated in her report, she anticipated $230,000 worth of savings. If we pay for the improvements with cash rather than financing it, that number rises to $282,000. And that's the recommendation that's coming from staff this evening, that we use cash rather than finance this particular project. Now, the actual savings that the town will benefit from is dependent largely on the future cost of oil, which is something no one can predict. But I ran some calculations earlier today, and even at the historically low cost that the town is paying today, which is $1.57, we can reasonably anticipate $53,000 in savings. If that number for the cost of oil rises to $2 a gallon, that number rises, the savings over 20 years rises to $130,000. If the number goes to $2.50, which is not unreasonable for a gallon of fuel oil, our savings would rise to $220,000 over that 20-year period. So I think it's safe to say that while there are some uncertainties in predicting the future cost of oil, even after the cost of this project is absorbed, there's a considerable amount of financial savings that would accrue to the parking fund as a result of implementing these energy savings measures. Now, the last thing I want to say is I've met recently with the folks at Wyndham Regional Commission who are managing the Wyndham Wood Heat project. And they have introduced the possibility of some additional financial incentives for this slate of energy projects. For example, if we were to incorporate all of these changes, they would increase their level of participation in the pellet boiler from 25% up to 35%. So that would reduce the cost to the town to implement the whole package of energy measures. There's some other additional savings that could come from Efficiency Vermont, a couple of grand for a particular, kind of incentive. And I guess my promise to you folks would be, if you approve this slate of improvements, that we would work closely with the folks at Wyndham Regional Commission to ensure that each and every one of those incentive opportunities are fully captured. What that would do is just lower the amount that the overall capital program for fiscal 18 would cost. That's what I have to say. Is there any questions or comments?
I am extremely pleased to have this come before us. I am extremely pleased to have us discussing these energy efficiencies. I'm glad that it's coming at such an early time. I actually didn't expect we'd get to hear this so early on. And moving away from fossil fuels is very important. And I think the cost runs deeper than what we pay per gallon, overall. And I'm very pleased with this, and I thank you for the work that you and your team put into this.
Does anyone else have comments? I do, but I'll go last.
Here you go, John.
And I'm going to be the bad guy. I have no problem with most of the improvements. I am still very leery about changing over to wood heat. And Peter, I don't know if you're here for this reason or not, but okay. So, and I'm hoping you can clear some things up. But I've talked to a lot of different people about wood pellet and furnaces, and especially for commercial use. And everybody keeps talking about the price of oil going up. And I said this at one of our last meetings, that wood pellets are a commodity. And you can't tell me that those prices are not going to go up. The more that people use wood pellets, it's just human nature that those are going to go up. So whenever we talk about this, nobody ever mentions that wood pellet prices are going to go up. They always mention the oil prices are going to go up. We have a furnace that's in there that's working. There is more work that I think needs to be done to that building than a wood furnace. It is, for a 13-year-old building, it's awful. The stairs needed to be rebuilt. Was that last year or the year before?
Last year.
Because they crumbled. The walls are falling apart. The infrastructure of that building, I think, needs a lot more work than what we're anticipating. And for me to take out a perfectly good boiler to put in something that is only a savings of, and what is the total price for the wood furnace, or for the wood pellet boiler? Because it's not 66, it's more than that.
Mm-hmm. So that number that's included in there is
That reflects
a 25% reduction in the cost provided by the Wyndham Wood Heat Incentive Program. So it's a larger number. It's
So we're looking at
a large
100,000.
number reduced by 25% to arrive at that
So we're
66.
closer to 100,000.
Yep.
We're closer to 85.
As a rule, I don't do math in my head. So.
I don't either. That's why I rounded high. And I know I'm probably the lone wolf here, but
Well, John, I think you'd be crazy to not think that you're absolutely right about wood pellets being a commodity. I mean, anything. I think that's a true statement, so I just want to give you some validation on that.
you know what? And I appreciate that, but to me, it's not the validation. It's just that building needs a lot more work than I think that we're not recognizing yet. And to me, and I know in the larger scheme of things that we're trying to get away from fossil fuels and all that, and I understand all that. I understand all that, but I've heard about the maintenance with wood pellets. I've heard about storage for the pellets. I've heard that there's a lot of different things and I haven't seen concrete figures. All these figures that people are throwing out are subjective. And I don't want to say that they're made up, but they're guessing. You're guessing on what we're going to save. And so I just have a little bit of a hard time with that. So that's, I don't know if that falls, I know that I'm looking at three faces that are going, well, you're just a fossil.
I am not.
No, but that's okay. That's all right. That's fine. I don't mind, but that's my speech.
I think my face was saying, why is everything falling apart in this building? And then I'm saying, should I even bother asking that, or is that just another can of worms?
It's just been a sore project.
Yeah, that's just
from almost day one.
Yeah. David wanted to say something.
A couple of things. Wood pellets are a commodity.
Yep.
And the price of commodities go up.
Yep.
And the price of commodities go down.
Yep.
And one of the reasons that the commodity, that oil right now is low, is because there's a lot of supply.
Mm-hmm.
And if people, particularly local people in the forest industry, which is under a lot of stress because nobody's taking all the not best woods that used to go into paper, nobody's buying those anymore. There's nothing. There's that part of the market's gone. If there were an opportunity for the forest industry to turn those into pellets, it's quite likely there would be a growth in the pellet industry, which would produce a surplus, which would run the commodity price down. So the likelihood of it going up is no greater than the likelihood of it going down. Depends on what happens. So I mean, you're welcome to look at it that way, but that's only half of the story. And that's enough. I'll let Peter talk about it. Oh, there was one other thing. I don't have the numbers from the Academy pellet boiler yet because we only had them for the one winter, and it was an unusual winter. But the chip boiler at the high school, which has been there for, I don't know, when did they finish that? 10, 12 years since they finished that? Yeah, it's at least 10 years. Molly went through 12 years of school. It was going on when she was there, or when she was in elementary school. And the savings, I don't know the numbers on that, but they're phenomenal. Ron mentions it all the time when people talk about the investment at the high school and the savings because of the energy work that they did. So there is a track record on it, and Peter being in the industry probably has got some more numbers that are some evidence of what actually happens when you do the conversion.
Yeah, so John, you raised a couple of questions.
Can you do me a favor and introduce yourself for the viewers?
So Peter Yost, I work at Building Green, but I'm filling in for Marion Major, who is on maternity leave at Wyndham Regional Commission. So I agreed to, because I've been on the team for the Wyndham Wood Heat Project, to be here in her stead. First of all, so wood pellets don't react to price indications the same way that oil does, in part because they're a local commodity, and we're not buying it from the Middle East. The one thing we can count on with oil is volatility, right? Because the prices come down depending upon what Saudi Arabia does sometimes. It depends on federal policy within our own country in terms of pipelines. And so all of the factors that I think make oil so volatile are muted when it comes to wood pellets because they're local, and the supply and demand is quite different than it is for a worldwide commodity. The second thing is that normally, and John, I completely agree with you, net present value calculations and trying to calculate, we can't even get the Energy Information Administration to correctly forecast any types of prices for more than 6 months, much less 15 to 20 years. So it's a bit of a Ouija board exercise. But when you look at how Ouija board oil is compared to how Ouija board pellets are, there's a huge difference. When we look at price volatility in oil prices, they're not in any way similar to the volatility of wood pellets. When we do price projections, we do factor in a pellet price increase over a 15 to 30 year period, but that price increase is not the same as what we do for oil. So there is in the calculations, no matter how much you believe in them, a greater increase for oil because historically pellets are much more stable than oil. The other thing is that I did not do the energy audit on the Transportation Center, but I've worked a lot with Chris Hebb, the engineer. His assessment of the service life of the existing boiler is not that it's in good shape. And the controls basically do not work. Secondly, because the existing oil boiler is located outside of the building, 24/7 there is an oil pump that circulates continually because that boiler is located outside. The things that require a lot of electricity to run are anything that creates heat or anything that has a motor. So a pump like that is quite expensive to operate. That is feeding into the advantage to the pellet boiler system as well. I can't speak to the overall durability or service problems with the whole transportation center building, but it's this is sort of a separate package of improvements. So in a way, it's not fair to talk about the problems with the overall building, which we are going to have to deal with anyway. This is sort of an opportunity within the current situation because of the funds that came to Wyndham Wood County on the Wood Heat project to basically take advantage of those savings. So if you don't take advantage of the savings, then when you go to make a decision about wood heat or oil in the future or replace that boiler, you're not going to be underwritten by the program.
Just one question I have about volatility of pellets. You say that it's a lot less than an oil. But I do remember, because I've had a pellet stove in my home for 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
I love my pellet stove. But I also know that for me, there's a lot more maintenance to that than there is when I had an oil burner.
Right.
Or now I have propane. But so, and I can't remember how many years ago it was that wood pellets were scarce. I mean, and it went up to, they were getting $4.50 a ton. And so there is some volatility with wood pellets.
Yeah,
And I don't know what caused that. There was a bunch of things, because there was a couple fires at a couple of the processing places over in New Hampshire or wherever. So I do know that affected it. But it was also that there wasn't a lot out there.
Yeah, and the price volatility for bagged pellets for consumers for wood pellet stoves, that does respond to other fuel prices. But for bulk purchase, especially under contract, they tend to be a lot less volatile because they're not driven by consumer demand. A lot of the bagged pellets respond to when the price of oil goes up or propane, people do their pellet stoves more. So the availability of bagged pellets goes up and down dramatically depending upon people's fuel source use. That's not true for bulk purchase for boilers, for large pellet boiler purchases.
And I'm just going to play devil's advocate a little bit. That's as of now.
Yeah.
But the more people that put in bulk units, and I'm probably just being the glass is half empty.
Fred thinks so.
Thank you. That these companies aren't going to say, hey, we can make a lot more money. We can, hey, they want these pellets. We're the only way. Yes, they are local. Don't tell me local companies don't want to make money. So.
Well, we're factoring in volatility with oil. We're not factoring in volatility with the pellets.
Right.
That's what's missing in the equation.
Right. So it's true. The price increases for the cost of pellets is much less, but there's a fairly long history of those prices being less volatile bulk purchase when the price of oil or the price of natural gas is going up.
I would absolutely agree with that. But we're talking about everything that we talk about now is future. We're always 20 years out. We're going to save $3,000 a year for the next 20 years. So it's always in the future. We're not talking about the past. So,
can I ask Patrick a question?
Yes.
In 20 years, the prediction is that we'll save $230,000. Right? Is that what you said?
That's for the whole package.
Right. That's what you said. On the last page of the memo, it says we'll save, and this is for buying pellets as opposed to oil. We're going to save $3,000, under $3,000 a year for 20 years. That's $60,000. Where does the other $170,000 savings come from?
Okay, so let's see how I can answer that.
I don't mean
Margaret, no. I foresaw that question when I was reading the memo today, which is why I sort of ran through the savings calculations somewhat differently, because I think it could be expressed better. In the audits themselves, you'll recall that $230,000 was anticipated to be saved above and beyond the cost of the project over 20 years. As I said earlier, that number rises to about $280,000 if instead of financing that package of investments, you pay for it with cash, which is what we're recommending here. That would get you to $280,000, okay? But that $280,000 calculation is based on a particularly assumed cost of oil, that being $2.83, right? That's in all of the municipal energy audits. Margaret is really clear that her assumption for the starting cost of oil is $2.83. Now, we all know that the price we're paying for oil is less than that, Okay? At the price we're paying for oil, the savings would be about $53,000, which over 20 years is that number that I mentioned. But I think it's safe to say that $1.57 is not where oil is likely to stay, and it has every potential to rise. If it rises to $2, that savings goes from $53,000 to $130,000. If it goes to $2.50 a gallon, it rises again to $220,000.
So we're guessing though, like the 230
We're
is a
making
total
a judgment
guess.
with insufficient information.
Right. That's what makes me really nervous because
And
we're guessing.
That is, it's a question about, in the board's judgment, is the price of oil likely to stay where it is or go up? And how does that compare to where we anticipate the price of pellets going? Now, the calculations, I can assure you, do include a cost increase for pellets, but just as Peter pointed out, not to the same degree that oil is anticipated.
Right. But at $2,017 right now, if we put this $155,000 in, we would save we'd have $53,000 in savings.
Above and beyond the cost of the project, yes. So after the project has been fully paid for, there'd be an additional $53,000. Yep. And if the cost of oil goes up, then that would be enhanced.
And you can say where that money comes from, because you're making energy improvements to the building enclosure.
Yes,
right. And the pellet boiler is much higher efficiency than the existing oil boiler.
I just want to point out one thing about this particular topic compared to other topics where we're looking at the future and guessing what we're going to need. And the water mains, the sewer mains are the most obvious example from tonight, where we're talking about millions of dollars of cost. No part of that conversation is about how much are we going to save. This is the only issue that ever comes before us where we're talking about how much are we going to save. And what we're saying is, well, I'm not sure I want to do it because I really want to save whatever the number was, the 230 or the 280 if we pay cash, and saving 56 isn't enough. And in every single scenario, we're going to save money. So I mean, we can talk about that speculation, but this is the only place all night where we're talking about saving money. So I'm not sure why. What more there is to say.
I think in this case, and Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're just trying to work with numbers we feel comfortable with in making the full decision. We don't want to assume that oil is going to go up to $4, and so we'll be, rolling in savings.
Right.
I think I get your point, but I think we're just we're all trying to get to the comfortable level of making a clear decision about it.
Yeah. And I know there was a memo, which I don't have anymore, and I don't think Brandy and Tim ever saw the energy audit that laid this all out.
I read it.
Did you read it?
I printed
Okay.
it off.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Tim just put it perfectly. I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and we are making these assumptions based on, and granted, everything we do, we're making an assumption on, but we're and I had this problem before when we voted on it. And I keep going back to the parking infrastructure, and I know when we voted on it, before I did vote against it, because there were those, I thought there were more immediate issues, as everybody knows, with the paving in those lots. So we used the parking money to actually pave. And there's no proposal here to do any paving. So it's just wrapping the head around what the savings are gonna be.
I think I'm pretty, I guess I get used to the budget process because I have to listen to it so much from Tom Martin. But what I really have learned from Tom is it's all projections and assumptions. And he'll say, sometimes this is going to be wrong and sometimes it's going to be dead on. And it's really about your appetite for risk and what your kind of long-term goal is. And in that, I guess I'm comfortable with assumptions. I'm comfortable with the assumption process in a budget.
Yeah. And I also think it comes down to at least for me, and I'm probably going to get eye rolls on this one, but that's okay. I mean, for me, it's also a personal assumption of what is going on in the world. I totally believe there's global warming. And I believe that a lot of this stuff. But for me personally, I just don't see it as doom and gloom. I don't see it as the world is going to end in the next 20 years if we don't do all this. I think that technology is changing at such an incredible pace that I think we may even look back in 10 years and go, we burnt wood pellets? What the hell was up with that? What were we thinking? That's how fast I think, in my mind, how fast I think technology is changing. Look what's happened in solar, in everything, in how quickly it's changed, in computers, and so.
I think you're probably right.
So, for me, that is my, so for David to say, and you have yours and I have mine. Mine is that I just don't think if we don't do this, oh my God, it's Chicken Little. The sky is going to fall and we're all going to be living on Mars, in suits.
You're talking about the change to the boiler.
Yes.
Right? You're not questioning the entire process of upgrading energy efficiencies.
No. I'm just saying that.
I just wanted to clarify.
No. Energy efficiencies, I think are absolutely necessary, like on the walls and stuff. But when it comes down to the pellet boiler, and I just think that technology is going to change, and so that's. Yeah. And I just don't think that it's all doom and gloom. On everything that we talk about when we're talking about energy efficiencies or.
I think you're right about technology is going to change. I certainly don't think that. Sorry, wood pellets are like the wave of the future. What I think it's better. It's a better step in that direction. And we're certainly going to look back probably in less than 20 years and say there's something better out there. And we're going to look at upgrading it again at that time. I think you're absolutely right. I personally think that it's a good step in that direction, and I make that step knowing that 10 years from now, if I'm still sitting at this table, somebody's going to drop something else on this table and say this is a better one, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I just would point out that in the projects we've done all throughout Windham County, if it's a new boiler, hands down, you keep it. So Chris's HEB assessment is heavily dependent upon the fact that his assessment of the existing boiler is that it's of pretty uncertain service life and the control systems are basically non-functional. So to me, that's a huge part of this is if there's a existing oil boiler that works well, why change it out? But if you don't trust Chris's assessment of the boiler, then to me, that's pivotal, right? Because that's a huge part of this. The other thing is that I bought my pre-purchase fuel oil for my boiler in August of 2007-8. Does anybody remember what the price of a gallon of fuel oil was in August of 2007 and 8? $4.78 a gallon. That was when oil was $150 a barrel.
Right.
So I don't care how much volatility there is in the projections for wood pellets. Wood pellets will never have that type of volatility because it's not driven by global or worldwide decisions. It's determined by what happens in the northeast of this county. So we do not know what the price of a gallon of oil is going to be, except we know that we will be a lot less certain about that than we will be the price of pellets. It's the nature of the game.
I've waited. You. I know you have something to say.
And he's not going to say it.
You're welcome.
I don't have anything to say that hasn't already been said.
Okay. Oh, man, I thought you were going to enlighten me more. Sorry. Okay.
First of all, I'll ask you, if everybody feels that they have enough information to vote, because we don't have to vote on this tonight, correct?
That's correct.
And if anybody needs more information, we don't have to vote on it tonight. I mean, I'm still confused because I was writing little chicken scratches, but if people want to vote, I'm happy to vote. I'm probably not going to vote the way anybody wants me to vote, or what we can do. I just don't know how people feel.
I'd like to make a motion
motion?
and see if we're ready to decide on that.
Is this
So,
Oh, wait, Tim
point
has a
of
question.
order clarification?
Oh, yeah.
Is there potentially two motions? One on the budget?
It's, can we do
Which
it?
incorporates it.
We can do it, well, we could divide it up.
What you should do, if it's all, because it's an enterprise fund, we're back to that same conversation we had earlier, where it's all one pot of money. I think if there are some among you who want to change any part of this, whether it's operating line items or whether it's the capital plan, you should have that discussion and talk about what changes you would want made so that the group can decide on a set of figures that then could be adopted with the language that's provided to you. So it doesn't have to be adopted with one motion as presented, but it wouldn't really make sense to adopt the budget and separately adopt the capital plan when in fact, in this case, they're integrated. They're part of one whole.
I don't have a problem with voting. I just had a question about the budget. And I didn't want to like ruin the mojo. But it's a couple newbie questions. Sure. The snow removal. So doesn't the town remove snow and come out of the town budget for that?
So the snow removal in the parking lots are done by contract. And snow removal is one of those lines you're really going to want to watch because snow removal in the parking fund is the difference between a break-even year or a deficit. Really, it's the most volatile line item in the parking fund budget, and it's done by contract. And every year we put it out to bid, and local private firms clear out the snow from all the parking lots, and that's not something that the town does. The town plow trucks do the roads, and we contract out the parking lots.
So that makes sense, and I should have known that, but
that's fine.
That's how you learn.
Yeah. And my only other question is, how many people are employed in the
Three.
staff? Three. Okay. Yep. That's my only two questions that I wanted.
And they have the hardest job in town.
No doubt.
Because they make no one happy.
Absolutely.
And they're like the nicest people, but no one cuts them any slack, so I salute them.
That's nice of you to say.
I totally do salute them.
I should stop paying my tickets in pennies. I should really
Yes, you should.
I-
Or stop getting tickets.
Were you gonna make a motion?
Yeah, I'm helping with the capital.
David's making a
For the
motion.
right moment. I move that we approve the FY18 parking fund budget and capital improvement plan.
We have a motion to approve the FY18 parking fund budget and capital improvement plan. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, the motion carries 3-2. We approve the parking budget and capital plan.
Very good conversation, good discussion. I thought.
Okay,
Thanks,
next. Okay,
Peter, thanks.
Yes.
Nice to meet
You
you.
gonna walk home?
Thank you.
No, he walks everywhere.
All the way up here. Next up is the solid waste budget.
May I?
Yes.
So
Starting to get silly now.
as a budget, this is the simplest one that we deal with. And I'll take just a minute and go through the line items in the budget that was attached to the memorandum. There's a couple of different issues for us to address this year in just the continued transition in the whole area of solid waste that are what lead to the second recommendation we have for you tonight. So I think the budget is pretty straightforward, but then we have a recommendation for a transfer from the general fund also for reasons I'll explain right now. So if you look at the revenues first, there's only 4 items of revenue. The interest income and the container sales are level funded and small amounts. The larger items are the transfer in from the general fund and the refuse bag revenue. I'm going to speak to them in that order. So the last of the four items there is the transfer in, and the reason that that's going up is only because of the closure of the MRF at the solid waste district. So the solid waste district made a decision this year. It was going to be a level assessment. It would have been the 397,640 again, except we needed to increase our increase was assessed. Our assessment was increased by the one-time allocation of our share of the closure costs, which was about $34,000, and that's how we ended up at the 431,836. Yep. So I dwell on that a little bit, only to point out that that is something that if things were operating in a steady as she goes manner at the district, we would expect that to be a one-off, and we'd expect to revert back to the 400,000 or so next year. We can't assume that. We don't need to worry about that tonight, but we can't assume that because of the things that are changing at the district. And so, we'll deal with that as time goes on. We'll talk about it a little bit in the expenditure side as well. But the bag revenue is the bigger issue for us to address, because the bag revenue, we have real life experience now that's sufficient to know that people are not buying as many of the bags as we expected. So the revenue is down by about $100,000 compared to what we had budgeted to expect to receive for the year. And so we've actually lowered the projection for next year by $105,000. We're expecting $325,000 instead of $430,000. Mm-hmm. If you look at the deficit that we're expecting to run for the operation of the solid waste fund, it's $57,724 in the projected deficit that this budget represents. So you can see that if we were making our bag revenue, we'd actually be making a surplus, a substantial surplus. But instead, because we're so significantly underperforming, we end up in deficit.
Or we're overperforming because people are.
Well, that's
exactly the point.
Double-edged
sword. Or half him.
That's exactly the point. That was the next sentence was, we don't want that to change. We don't want to sell more bags. We're glad with this outcome. But from a sustainability of this fund point of view, we've got to address that situation. And so the only two ways for us in a situation where there's such limited resources, is only the four items of revenue, is either to increase the transfer in from the general fund or to increase the prices of the bags.
Can't do that.
And our recommendation is don't do that. The balancing act of the incentive to shift over to recycling and compost while still trying to keep the whole process affordable for families is working, we think. And so our suggestion is that next year we recalibrate the transfer in from the general fund to reflect the reality that we're now getting a better grip on. Yep. And we'll move on from there in a more stable fashion. For this year, because we've got an operating deficit that we're about to encounter, we didn't have a deficit in the budget, but we have a deficit that we're experiencing because of the underage in the revenue from the bags. And because we're projecting a $57,000 deficit for next year, we are recommending also tonight, in addition to recommending this budget to you, we're recommending that you authorize a one-time transfer of $75,000 from the general fund to the solid waste fund. Yep. We feel really comfortable recommending that because of the surplus we're running. You heard from John earlier how well we're doing against budget in the general fund this year. We know that we're saving $200,000, a minimum of $200,000 based on the savings in the health insurance and the retirement plan. And everything else in total, when you look at all the other line items together, revenues and expenditures, it nets to a further surplus. There's still.
Are we talking about the
in the general fund?
Can I just ask a quick question about
Yes.
that? Where are we getting the money from the pool to make the deck improvements?
That's actually going to be expended from the capital fund.
Okay. Because I just sort of feel like we're spending all this surplus.
Well, and
We spent that $200,000 a couple of times.
And the capital fund, we drew down capital fund balance this year as part of the general fund budget. So what the that relates to the item we talked about earlier, where John and I will be coming back to you with a recommendation either at June 6th or at June 20th for a further transfer from the general fund to the capital fund this year to offset the accelerated cost of the pool improvement for the deck
But
replacement.
that's coming from the general fund.
It's going to be a general fund transfer
Right.
to the
Right.
capital
But we're
fund.
talking, you're also
For
talking.
tonight, we have enough money still in the capital fund. For what you authorized, the up to $20,000 that you authorized tonight,
right.
there's enough money in the capital fund to pay for that.
But what I'm saying, the transfer into the solid waste is from the general
From
fund.
the general fund,
But
right.
that other deck thing is from the general fund too.
Also.
Okay,
And-
I'm just
and-
saying like we are.
Yes.
I feel like we're just adding stuff up, but we don't know what it is.
No, you don't. That's why I'm explaining about the amount of surplus. So,
Okay.
so I'm saying to you, we asked you earlier tonight for we didn't actually ask you for it. We told you we were going to be coming back to ask for, a transfer. We have a rough idea of the amount. I'm trying desperately not to name it because we're just in too early of a place. It would be shooting from the hip to throw a number out there when it's not a well-calibrated number. I'd rather come back to you and recommend something sound. But it's not a small amount. It's tens of thousands of dollars. It's a substantial transfer. But the amount of that transfer plus this $75,000 transfer that we're recommending tonight, those two together will total less than the $200,000 that we know we're saving for in the retirement and the health.
Oh, right.
And so since we know we're saving that money, and since we know that we're going to have a surplus, we don't know exactly what the magnitude of the surplus is going to be, but in all the other aspects of general fund operations combined, we're going to have a surplus that is above and beyond that $200,000.
Right.
So as long as we ask you for transfers, and please understand that we wouldn't be asking unless we needed it. So it's not like a matter of convenience. Well, we're running a surplus, let's move some money around.
Right.
What we've got is a situation that emerged at the pool that demands expenditures that we're not budgeted for. And this situation where because of the bag sale revenue being down, we need to keep this fund properly funded. And so in these two instances, we look at this situation and we say, well, thank goodness this is a year that we're running a surplus in the general fund. Under Vermont law, you've got the authority to spend up to the amount that was authorized for the expenditure budget for FY17 that was authorized at town meeting in 2016. And so this amount of the surplus that we're running is available to you if there's a need for it and a prudent decision you could make to use that money for purposes that were not anticipated. Basically, you have that flexibility to address something that was not anticipated, so long as you don't exceed the total amount of expenditures that were authorized by town meeting. And so, again, we'll be back to you on the pool question, but for this one tonight, we've got solid estimated numbers of where we will be at year end 2018. So approximately 13 months from now. And that's about $75,000 in deficit for this fund unless we do something about it. So our recommendation tonight is approve the budget that's proposed before you, and also separately a one-time transfer of $75,000 from the general fund.
I mean, I have no problem with the transfer because I think that's important, but I also think we have to keep, and I know you guys are doing this, so it's not that I don't have faith that we're just not like spending all the surplus because, when we make these decisions about the surplus, some of it is we apply it to the property taxes so it goes down. So I just don't want us to get into this, we have all this surplus and do this stuff. And I'm not saying you guys are doing that. And I'm saying like the two things that we're talking about seem logical. But it's sort of like, I get worried about it because I feel like, at least personally, I'm going to forget at the next meeting, that, you know what I mean? I just don't want us to get into, I don't want us to forget as a select board that we're transferring this money is basically what I'm saying.
Well, for me, the transfer of the 75 is a wonderful thing.
Oh, I think too. I'm not complaining about the transfer with
Right.
the pool either. I'm just saying,
Right.
like, it was nice to keep track of it,
of course,
on our own world because we do things with the surplus.
That's why we.
At the end, I know.
I think I would put it another way to say that, balance when you bring up the 200,000 savings and saying, well, we have that extra and we're legally allowed to spend it, we're also looking for ways to return the
Right.
taxpayers' money
Right.
back to their pockets. To our pockets.
Right.
So that's what balances.
And if not for these two things, we wouldn't be suggesting you
Right.
touch it at all. There would be more money there.
And the fact that we're going to reduce it in next year's budget, you know, for the
So the assessment.
430 to the 3.5.
Right, the assessment wouldn't be, we won't be paying the one-time special assessment, but we will also be adjusting the transfer in to reflect the lower bag revenue. So that's going to offset.
That'll offset it.
Yeah.
And I had a question about the actual, so in the recycling side?
Yes.
Is there any elevator pitch? Can you give us any information on where that is going to land as far as
Sure.
how it's going to affect the outlook in the future?
So these are, you see actually, I was remiss. We focused so much on the revenue piece that we didn't talk about the expenditures at all. So let me say that you can see that in this year's proposed budget, there are more line items than we've had in the past, and things are changing pretty substantially in the line items that existed. The reason for that is the closure of the MRF and the switch to single stream. The good news is that while these are estimates, these are pretty solid estimates. They're based on contractual pricing in some respects, in some cases, and on estimates of what our tipping fee costs will be based on some good solid trends in volumes in the three different parts. So in garbage and compost and in recycling. And so, this won't end up being exactly where we land. There will be some differentiation between these line items and the actual experience that we have during the year, but it's pretty solid, and we're extremely confident that the proportional distribution from what we've been paying for garbage, what we've been paying for recycling, what we've been paying for compost, that those volumes, that shift in volume isn't going to shift back. People have developed better habits. And so, this big increase that we've had into the compost waste stream and the recycling waste stream, we expect to continue. Now, the pricing, because of recycling costs going up for the greater transportation costs, we've got the reduced assessment impact by the fact that we're not paying the district as much for recycling because of closing the MRF, but we're paying more for the transportation to send it up to Rutland. The net of all of that is still turning out to be a savings for the town, or still expected to be a savings for the town. So we have a high level of confidence that even though we're going to be in the first year of a new model, these are going to be pretty solid. Cool numbers.
Can I ask a question that everybody else might know the answer to? How come the compost transport is $7,500, but was zero this past year?
Right, because the Triple T is going to be charging us now for the transportation of the compost. It used to be all wrapped into the compost and recycling and garbage. And Patrick may be able to speak more specifically to how the $7,500 was actually generated as the amount for that line item. But you see that, and you also see a recycling transport number because of the fact that it's going to go to Rutland. Right. It wasn't zero. It was still being transported. It's a higher figure than the compost because the compost is being transported locally and the recycling is being transported to Rutland.
So this $7,500 used to live in one of these other numbers.
That's exactly right.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions, comments?
Want a motion?
Oh, I want to ask the public if they have any questions.
Oh.
or comments.
Well,
Franz Reichsman. So the name of the program is Pay As You Throw, and the idea was to have the people who are doing the throwing do the paying. Now, clearly there's a proportion there that some proportion is coming from the throwers and some proportion is coming from the taxpayers, but I wonder what's the right proportionality. I haven't really thought about this in depth, but it seems you're going against the direction of the program as a whole if you're moving additional money from the general fund as opposing to raising the price of the trash bags.
David.
The, I think the problem is that the recycling isn't paying for itself. So we're having to pay for the recycling, but we don't charge for the recycling. So unless you want to charge people for their recycling bins too. But, yeah.
On the positive side, like, I'm pretty sure that the town expected me to be throwing away one of those yellow bags per week. The family of 2 right now. So it's like, but I don't, it's every 2 weeks.
Well, we expected that, but we were hoping.
I know. So, but the positive of that is, I think you're not allowed to, you can't come back every year and ask us to do this. This is, we're getting our sea legs.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not going to say you can't.
No. And we won't want a special appropriation each year. What I think is important, though, for full disclosure is we expect that transfer to go up next year and then stay up. Basically, we're in a recalibrating moment where because we expected more bag sales, we don't have enough revenue. But now that we know we're going to have lower bag sales, which I think we all reasonably can view as a victory, we are going to need to, in next year's budget, increase the transfer in from the general fund and then maintain it at a higher level. It'll be steady. We won't require this special appropriation or the special transfer of the $75,000, but it'll still be the solid waste fund will be a greater burden to the general fund than it has been in this first couple of years of pay as you throw. And the reason for that is because we've so substantially reduced the garbage waste stream. And as Dave pointed out, that's the only one where we charge a fee for participation. You charge an entry fee into the garbage waste stream, but we all share the load for the other 2 waste streams.
And if we weren't, we'd be paying it's more expensive to dump the garbage than it is recycling, even though recycling doesn't pay for itself. So it is the best thing to do, fiscally as well as environmentally.
I think before, until Act 148 gets totally, figured out, I think these numbers are going to fluctuate for another couple of years on different things.
And with the changes that are still occurring at the district.
And the district,
too.
right.
There's uncertainty.
So there's still going to be a couple years of, not flux, but just, kind of playing with numbers.
But we can all agree that raising the bag prices
is a no-no. we might as well just burn our house down now. Because there's going to be arrows coming.
Are we ready? Are we ready for a motion?
Ready
to approve the fiscal year 18 solid waste budget.
You beat me to it.
I'm sorry. I felt a lag, and it's 9:30.
Yeah.
You can do the next one.
We have a motion to approve the FY18 solid waste budget. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carries 5-0. Randy, do you want to do this one?
Yes, I do. To approve the transfer of $75,000 from the general fund to the solid waste fund.
We have a motion to approve the transfer of $75,000 from the general fund to the solid waste fund. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carries 5-0. The last item. The last item is I'm going to read the vacancies for town committees and boards. And if you're interested in any of these, you have to get your application into the town manager's office by June 15th, because the select board will be making the appointments on June 20th. So I'm going to read this really long list. Let's see. Agriculture Advisory Board, ADA Committee.
And I remember the ASL.
I know. Art. John's talking. Arts Committee. Brattleboro Area Skate Park is coming, and you have to be a Brattleboro resident to be on that board. Brattleboro Housing Partnerships. The Cemetery Committee. The Citizen Police Communications Committee. The Design Review Committee. There's a Design Review Committee alternate. There's a Development Review Board member. And then there's a Development Review Board alternate. We have a vacancy on the Energy Committee. We need a fence viewer, and that by statute, it must be a legal voter of the town.
It's a good one.
There's a vacancy on the Honor Roll Committee. We need an inspector of lumber, shingles, and wood. There's an opening on the Nelson E. Withington Fund Advisory Committee, the Planning Commission, Recreation and Parks Board. There's an opening for a trustee on Rescue Inc., Senior Solutions Advisory Council, the SEVCA Board, and that's, I guess we make a recommendation to the SEVCA Board based on the names that come in. Traffic Safety Committee, we need a citizen representative and a school representative. Tree Advisory Committee, and this is for my father, I hope he's listening. There's an opening for Weir of Coal.
Weir of Coal.
He's got to get his application.
Damn.
So again, June 15th, and I'm assuming all of these are listed somewhere on the town website. So if I got them, if people were not writing them down as I was saying them, they're somewhere to be found.
Jan, you look.
Yes, they are. They are by subject matter. If you're interested in a particular subject, you click on that and it will tell you the people whose terms are expiring, and then you will know.
Perfect.
What's
Thank you,
going to
Jan.
this year.
Does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I like this meeting.
Did I hear a motion?
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thanks, everybody, for all everybody does. Thank you.
Look at that.